Chapter 135. Dewey felt like he was going crazy. The number of whirlpools increased rapidly. Every time his fingers moved, the high-speed spinning layer of true power was like a thin stone flung out, brushing past the air, fast and slippery. It was obviously in the bag, it was obviously a win, it was obviously a cooked duck. Mixed in were all kinds of weird techniques that he himself could not remember, all kinds, endless, impossible to defend against, no one could withstand it. Let's wait here. Such a pervert, they have to enjoy it. Tan Tue could also kick consecutively? Dewey's eyes suddenly lit up. It was a vast expanse of whiteness, like countless white birds, forming a flock and rushing towards him. His opened arms with an extremely small tremble, his 10 fingers continuously changing. He gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing. Finally it was time for him to counterattack. What is this? Regardless of whether it was confidence or fighting spirit, after continuously suppressing his opponents, Tang Tian had already reached the peak. Even if Xia were to come forward, he would definitely rush forward. Dewey, who wanted to cry but had no tears, was practically rolling and crawling, battered and exhausted. One after another, the small white whirlpools, with a whistling sound, like a flock of noisy birds, nimbly entered the layers and layers of blue aura. Who exactly is this guy? To make matters worse, he was also in the cage. Although he had dodged a bullet, Dewey was not the least bit happy. Just now, when he recklessly rushed forward, all the whirlpools crashed into his chest. Without looking, he knew his chest was definitely full of bruises. But the worst thing was that his left rib that was hit by the great monument palm was most likely completely deformed. At this time he had already run a few streets and Dewey stopped. A bone-piercing dangerous aura rushed towards Tang Tian's nerves, but Tang Tian's gaze did not have the slightest change. The intense dangerous aura stimulated Tang Tian's entire body, causing all the hair on his body to stand. His attention was unprecedentedly focused, and his intuition spread out like water. Tang Tian was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. There was no one who could stop him. Whistling continuously, everywhere he passed people fell down. He could only feel the true power in his body surging, continuous and unending, his fighting intent burning, extremely reckless. The other branches must have received the news by now. The secret of Gu Shue's bloodline can no longer be hidden. They must be rushing over with all their might. Tang Tian's complacent voice suddenly came from behind. Dewey was scared out of his wits. He could not care about anything else and suddenly pounced forward and rolled. What's more, these were the only ones charging at him. His heart sank very, very quietly. He was very excited. Dewey, who was shocked, only felt that the dagger in his hand had hit the high-speed spinning turntable, and the force was slanted. Tang Tian unintentionally comprehended the killing technique of the scattering vortex, and his eyes flashed a look of ecstasy. Scattering vortex. Before Dewey could finish cursing, a mouthful of fresh blood rushed to his throat and he spat it out. The flying bird vortex dispersed the crowd, the incomparably ferocious great tablet seal, the Tan Tue blade that revealed its edge. Swish swish swish. Humph, how can we be the only unlucky one? Quick quick quick, hide. Don't let him see you. Guwu said in a panic. Exploding heavenly dragon energy, sharp crane body energy, borrowing force to fight staining fall. Tang Tian's most valuable experience in the chamber of the 18 bronze figures was that no matter how chaotic or complicated the situation was, no matter how intense the danger was, he could still maintain his calm and focus. Dewey only felt an extremely strong force fiercely crashing into his ribs. Tang Tian's imposing manner did not have the slightest bit of resistance. Instead it rose even higher. Tang Tian was already fighting crazily. Tang Tian, who was in the arena, looked left and right, his face showing that he had not had enough. Guwu cursed a few more times. Finally he was tired. He said dejectedly, "How can this be?" Even the valiant Mu Lei was so shocked that he forgot about his injuries. He muttered to himself, "There is actually such a valiant person in the world." Dewey no longer had the slightest bit of contempt in his heart. Such an unimaginable martial technique made him immediately fall into a passive position. Guwu stared blankly at Tang Tian. But the next scene made his face change. Scattering vortex was the martial technique that Tang Tian used the most during his 293rd attempt at the chamber of the 18 bronze figures. It was fast and could affect the opponent's actions, creating opportunities for himself. Facing the dangerous blue aura, Tang Tian did not know why, but the image of Ghost Claw's claw suddenly surfaced in his mind. The scene of Ghost Claw's fingertips rubbing against the air made Tang Tian think of skipping on water. The thin pieces of stone that were thrown out were spinning, brushing against the surface of the water and would bounce back. On the surface of every finger, there was an additional layer of high-speed spinning true power. Gu Wu had just recovered from the shock. His face was a mix of green and white. He gritted his teeth and lowered his voice with a hint of schadenfreude. But now, seeing De Wei dodging in a sorry state, Tang Tian felt his blood boiling. The flappy bird vortex just now made him extremely motivated, as if he was injected with chicken blood. Moves that he had never dared to use before, all sorts of weird variations of moves, all came crashing down like raindrops. A sharp blade aura brushed past his body. Tang Tian's Tan Tue drew a beautiful arc. De Wei, who was originally prepared to counterattack, saw this and his face changed again. In a short period of time, the desire to counterattack in his chest from a raging fire shrunk to a torch, then shrunk to a candle flame. Sinister. In the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, the number of bronze figures far exceeded him. He needed to continuously borrow the scattering vortex to drag the opponent's formation. Killing technique. De Wei's heart was beating wildly. If that brat saw them, he would definitely chase after them. He immediately carried his young master and hid in the shadows. The whistling whirlpools made De Wei miserable. They looked extremely chaotic, but it was as if they were trapped in a cage. No matter how hard they tried, they could not fly out. Tan Tue crossed and drew an arc aura. It was continuous, like maggots in the bones biting tightly on his back. If he was not afraid, he would be cut into pieces by these intersecting leg blades. This was the result of attacking the chamber of the 18 bronze figures for 293 times. One after another, small whirlpools were quickly rubbed out. Tang Tian's attention was unprecedentedly focused. Ever since he broke through the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, he seemed to have entered a whole new realm. There were not many changes in his true power and martial techniques, but in terms of his mental state he had a huge breakthrough. Tang Tian suddenly roared, shook both his arms, soared into the sky like a big bird. He landed in the middle of the group of guards. Tan Tue was like a blade. De Wei already knew, but he had never seen such a sharp Tan Tue. In the middle of the scattering vortex, a huge whirlpool suddenly flew out. He only felt a chill on his back. Where was his shirt cut? Was it the blade aura? De Wei's mind was also echoing this sentence. How could this be? De Wei deeply felt the same, nodding his head. Just as De Wei was surprised and suspicious, a figure suddenly flashed in front of him. An extremely excited face appeared in his vision. The saliva splashed, almost sprayed onto his face. The more Tang Tian fought, the more excited he got. Since when he was so contented? In the chamber of the 18 bronze figures he was always suppressed until the last breakthrough. He definitely did not have the upper hand. Great monument palm print. Not logical. Not logical. Still not logical. Gu Wu suddenly slapped his head, extremely annoyed. I should have thought of it earlier. Xia. That's right, the reason why Gu Shui could escape from Xia's hands was because of this guy. It must be him. The calm Gu Shui, with her snow-white face and mouth wide open, looked at the invincible Tang Tian. The unstoppable guy in front of her and the stingy young lad who sneakily took revenge on Yaya, were they really the same person? To be defeated by someone who could survive from Xia's hands, it did not seem that unacceptable. I will fight, 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 fight. That's right, why were they the unlucky ones? But the opponent had used it and he himself felt uncomfortable and did not know how to block it. De Wei had experienced hundreds of big and small battles, but he had never been in such a difficult battle, so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. Hearing this, De Wei was stunned. The anger in his heart immediately disappeared without a trace. Why are you running? Gu Wu struggled with all his might and scolded, I don't believe that he alone can defeat everyone. Tang Tian scolded, but his right palm quietly entered the whirlpool of flying birds. This was the first time he fought with someone after passing the chamber of the 18 bronze figures. The feeling this time was completely different from before. It was obvious that the opponent's strength exceeded his by quite a bit, but he did not feel pressured at all. This guy, is he crazy? Especially after the counterattack, the strong sense of danger was scattered by his counterattack and he immediately gained the upper hand. Layers and layers of blue aura, like a tight defensive line, were barged in by a group of unreasonable star spirit beasts and suddenly collapsed. "You bunch of idiots, what are you standing there for? All of you attack." Gu Wu, who was just knocked unconscious by Tang Tian, was now awakened by his subordinates. Upon seeing the situation of the battle, he was immediately shocked and angry. What made him even more afraid to stop was the roar behind him. "Stop!" Gu Wu suddenly shouted. "Damn it!" De Wei scratched his head in confusion, but still followed his instructions and jumped to the highest rooftop nearby. From there he could see the battlefield from afar, and those fierce guards were now lying on the ground. The flock of birds and the blue aura crashed into each other. "Jump to the rooftop, a higher place," Gu said. The sharp blue aura immediately fell to the left and right. The white whirlpools were like a chaotic flock of birds. Every whirlpool was spinning at an extremely high speed, and when the blue aura touched them, it would immediately bounce off. And when the whirlpools and whirlpools collided, it would bounce off at an even more astonishing speed. When he saw Tang Tian roar and with one punch sent 3 guards flying, his candle-like desire to retaliate was immediately extinguished. He appeared beside Gu Wu in a panic, picked up Gu Wu and broke into a run. His back felt cold. Tang Tian's Tan-Tue blade just now had cut a big hole at the back of his pants, but De Wei could not care less about his shame. Flying bird's whirlpool. Tang Tian's heart moved and his Sans Ho quietly underwent a change. This extremely weird fellow, who exactly was he? Gu Wu's scolding made the other guards awake. All of them braced themselves and rushed forward like a swarm of bees. De Wei finally heaved a sigh of relief. In that instant he almost had the urge to cry. "Ha ha. Thank you for the praise." Although there were many people in front of him, but compared to the 18 trash in the chamber of the bronze figures, no matter if it was strength or wretchedness, they could not be mentioned in the same breath. Tang Tian was very excited. De Wei buried his head and sprinted, not daring to reply, but his speed became even faster. "Scoundrel! Scoundrel! Scoundrel!" Chapter 136. But, you knocked into it yourself. If he did not make a face, he would not be able to express the joy in his heart. Under the dazzling Tan-Tue blade aura, countless blood splattered, and screams filled the entire field. No. Tan-Tue killing technique. When demons and gods at work used this technique, Tang Tian was so excited that he wanted to jump up and roar. All the martial artists in a 10-meter radius around him were all injured, and the ground was littered with injured people wailing. He had tried all sorts of methods and tried all sorts of plots. A square tablet seal appeared in his field of vision without warning. His speed was extremely fast and the distance between them was too close, so close that he could not react at all. He could only watch as it grew bigger and bigger in his eyes. Tang Tian was slightly surprised, but he grinned. "Idiot. Good hit, good hit." Gu Wu, who was watching from afar, was beaming with joy. Suddenly he paused and asked uncertainly, "Tan-Tue doesn't seem to have this technique." This premonition was so strong that it was a mess. Unknowingly, De Wei's premonition became even stronger. Tang Tian, who had just cleaned up, proudly made a face at Qilon. After exchanging blows with De Wei, Tang Tian suddenly realized that the opponent was not as strong as he had imagined, nor as dangerous. And he himself was not as weak as he had imagined. Tang Tian snorted coldly and with a flash he disappeared. Luckily he managed to escape. Tang Tian did not say a word in front of him. Among the rank 6 light body techniques, it was definitely the best. The strongest point of the intercept flowing fire was in the word intercept. In terms of intercepting the enemy, it was rare to find a match. He looked at Tang Tian mockingly. "Just based on you, how can you get rid of me?" Tang Tian really wanted to continue. After suppressing his fighting spirit for so long, it had completely swallowed him. In the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, he had been continuously abused for so many days. "Give up." With a flash of fire he pounced towards Tang Tian. "Seeking death." Qilon gritted his teeth and spat out 2 words. "Pu-piu-piu." Qilan's entire face was embedded in the palm print of the great monument. Her body was still in the posture of rushing forward, motionless like a statue. Before he finished speaking, Tang Tian's figure disappeared from where he stood. "Take your time and enjoy it." Everyone was thrown into a complete mess. Those ordinary cultivators were chopped up like melons and vegetables by Tang Tian. Bing was not far away, looking at Tang Tian, who was looking around. He could see that Tang Tian was not satisfied. After entering Phylan's star and encountering a powerhouse like the Night Swordsman Xia, Tang Tian was still in an extremely suppressed situation. The mysterious young man had unimaginable battle techniques. Tang Tian, who had been suppressed, suddenly erupted. Before he could finish his words, he vanished once more. He retracted his true power, and the great monument palm print dissipated in the air. Qi Lan's entire face turned purple, and with a plop she fell to the ground unconscious. Suddenly a loud shout tore through the air. "Do it!" So when he saw a group of ferocious-looking martial artists suddenly rushing over from the corner of the street, not only was he not worried, his eyes lit up as though he was a starving beast. Coincidentally, a group of prey appeared in front of him. Qi Lan. Gu Wuqi was filled with uncontrollable excitement. Tan Tue Blade. Tang Tian, who had struggled to escape from the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, was extremely sensitive to opportunities, far beyond anyone's imagination. Even if it was a tenth of a second, he would not miss it, not to mention that these people were obviously stunned. Spinning top blade. His two legs were like two steel blades that were flung away. Tang Tian's figure spun faster and faster, his body getting shorter and shorter. Countless blade auras like a fountain gushed out. An entire circumference of 3 feet was completely enveloped by the blade auras. Intercepting relied on intuition to compete with a godlike young man's intuition. How stupid are you? Tang Tian bit the bullet and persevered bit by bit, continuously struggling in this kind of suppression. It looked like an extremely futile struggle. It was not easy for him to escape, but this kind of suppressed mentality was still present in Tang Tian's body. He racked his brains but still could not understand why was this. He closed his eyes in fright. Go! Tang Tian's fighting spirit was incomparably high, his aura had reached its peak, he had an unprecedented thirst for battle. Today Tang Tian went all out. He was completely holding back his energy, he did not want to admit defeat, he did not want to be trampled over by those 18 trash. He bit the bullet and persevered, he racked his brains, desperately thinking of all the methods he could think of. You guys go and snatch Gu Shui, leave this person to me. Gu Wu was dumbstruck, he originally thought that a fierce battle would not happen. Qi Lan actually lost in such an unbelievable way. Too unbelievable. All of his experiences were formed from repeated failures and being trampled over. Finally, he narrowly passed through the chamber of the 18 bronze figures. The moment he passed through the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, he thought it was an illusion. Bang! In the next moment, Tang Tian appeared in the middle of the group of martial artists. Tang Tian's strength was out of everyone's expectations. When Tang Tian appeared in the middle of their group in that instant, they actually did not have any reaction. Who exactly are you? The martial artists who were slightly further away froze on the spot. Their bodies were cold, their faces were pale, the young man in front of them was a complete demon in their eyes. Tang Tian's gaze swept across the martial artists who were still standing. The group of martial artists were like frightened chicks. They screamed and turned to leave. But it was another killing move. There was almost no hope of victory. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night in the Black Mountain City. Dream on. But Qi Lan suddenly realized something was wrong. Until today. Idiot. Such a scene was so shocking. Wait a minute. The Tang Tian in front of him was slowly fading away. Thinking about the flying bird vortex just now, De Wei's face turned ugly. He did not care about rank 5 martial techniques, nor did he care about rank 5 killing techniques. But this mysterious young man's killing technique was so powerful that it was beyond his imagination. De Wei suddenly became excited. Yes, this is it. What is happening? Tang Tian's body spun on the spot. Gu Wu immediately believed it because this name was too vivid. Want to run? Qi Lan was surprised, the flame flashed and disappeared. Until now he was suddenly enlightened, he had entered a whole new realm, he started to understand, he actually unknowingly became stronger. Gu Wu and De Wei, who were watching from afar, suddenly became alert. Now this brat had another killing move. A streak of raging flames whistled through the air like a meteor streaking across the night sky. A man with flame-like red hair appeared in front of Tang Tian. His face was like a knife, his whole body was covered in red flames, his ice-blue eyes stared coldly at Tang Tian. A dazzling sharp aura suddenly rose up from the ground. Seeing Qi Lan's face turn from green to black, An unparalleled sense of satisfaction immediately filled Tang Tian's body. Tang Tian suddenly realized it was actually more satisfying than defeating all those small fries previously. A series of screams came from behind him. Qilin was shocked, but did not dare to turn back, staring intently at Tang Tian in front of him. The person in front of him was strong. If he was careless, he would fall into a passive position. Tang Tian mumbled. His face looked like it had nothing to do with him. Tang Tian did not even look at Qilin, although this brat looked good, but he did not forget his original intention of protecting Wuxia. Qilin said coldly. The flame flashed and once again appeared in front of Tang Tian. Quickly snatch Wuxia. Looking at the magnificent scene of the blade suddenly erupting like a fountain, it simply made every drop of blood freeze. It was as if suddenly all the restraints disappeared. He could attack as he wished. Every attack of his was completely flawless. He was bursting with confidence. He dared to try more, and those unimaginable changes in techniques greatly increased his fighting power. His confidence was even stronger. An inconceivable victory, an inconceivable foresight, an inconceivable killing move. Shua Qilin, who was covered in flames, blocked Tang Tian's path and said proudly, "In front of me, Qilin, no one has ever escaped." Looking at the martial artists rushing towards him, Tang Tian suddenly grinned, like a wild beast that had not eaten its fill, showing his sharp fangs that still had traces of blood. The moment they collided, Tang Tian's face revealed an expression that he could not bear to look at. To collide with the great monument palm print at such a fast speed, how painful would that be? Tang Tian knew his great monument palm print, as compared to ordinary rocks, was much harder. Dewey had a premonition this brat would definitely bring more surprises to everyone, definitely not just this. He had personally experienced it, and it was especially profound. Qilin was too careless, but even if he was not careless, he was definitely not the mysterious young man's opponent. Dewey did not make a sound. Qilan's face immediately turned green. He was originally a rather conceited person. He had just boasted and was tricked. It was no different than being slapped on the ear in front of everyone. Pupiu. Not good. He was tricked. He had enough confidence to say such words. His light body technique was called flowing flame interception. Qilin swore in his heart he must definitely tear this despicable brat into pieces. Tang Tian rapidly enlarged in his eyes. Suddenly, a strong sense of danger abruptly surged from the bottom of his heart. This was the so-called fight crazily. The more confidence he had, the more ingenious his martial techniques were, the easier it was to win, and winning would further increase his confidence. The more he fought, the better it was. Of course, he recognized Qilin. He was one of the generals that Gu Yonghua had recruited. His strength was not below his. Especially in such a direct battle, he was more aggressive than him. Ever since Tang Tian first came into contact with the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, he was always in a position of being suppressed. This was completely and utterly suppressed. The Tang Tian in front of him had already become as faint as a fog. Qilin suddenly turned back. At this moment, Dewey was trembling in fear. He was incomparably glad that they had escaped. Hearing the young master's question, he was also a little uncertain. It should be a killing technique. Only a killing technique would have such power. I remember Tan Tui's killing technique. It seems to be called spinning top blade. This was the first time they saw their own comrade falling like wheat being cut. Chapter 137. There are enemies outside. It's not safe here. There could be danger at any time. How much strength does that require? Wuxia was worried. Those people? He could tell that when Tang Tian threw those people, he only used pure arm strength. Those martial artists with heavy bodies were like nothing in his hands. With just a casual throw, they were all 7 to 8 feet away. Black Mountain City was shocked. With that, he found an empty space beside the fire, picked up a piece of wood to use as a pillow, and laid down to sleep. Tang Tian was puzzled. Why are you all looking at me like that? Gu and Xiong, who was sitting at the head of the table, had a bad look on his face. He had only been the Gu family patriarch for 3 days, and such a thing actually happened. Gu Wu had failed to snatch her away, and the secret of Gu Shue's blood meridians could not be hidden anymore. Where did this expert come from? She pointed at the martial artists who were guarding at the corner of the street. They were all staring at them, wanting to move but not daring to. Looking at the injured people on the ground, Tang Tian was satisfied. Yes. An ordinary-looking young man stood up and turned to leave. Tang Tian was probably the person who slept the most soundly in the entire Black Mountain City. Papa. The other families did not have the slightest intention of joining in. The internal competition of the Gu family had always been intense and no one dared to join in. At that time Tang Tian was like a sharp beast. His reason was dignified. Based on his understanding of the clan elders, the old fellows in the family would definitely not place the lifeline of the Gu family in the hands of others. With his own strength he repelled the waves of attacks from the Gu family. The number of martial artists that died in his hands was uncountable, and the entire Gu family was actually in a stalemate. Gu Shui could not help but think of the moment when Tang Tian suddenly rushed towards her in the white gutter. Right. Tang Tian moved his face closer, his face full of anticipation. Tang Tian was finally tired. He could not give Gu Shui time to gather these people. Gu Shui, who did not have any cards in her hands, had no chance of turning the tables. After making his threat, Tang Tian ignored the guys who were huddled together. Gu Shui and Mu Lei's expressions were stiff and strange, as if they had seen a ghost. They looked at Tang Tian as if they had seen a ghost. The heavenly green flame on his body was constantly eating away at the deep blue that was spreading from the wound on his waist. But the last bit of blue was swallowed by the heavenly green flame. Mu Lei finally heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the ground. His azure blood meridians could purify poison. The first elder also said, "In that case, Ling Su, you go and make a trip." Gu Shui had seen many talented youths at a young age, but Tang Tian was different from them. The morning sun shone through the window, but it could not penetrate the thick smoke. He yawned, and a layer of mist immediately appeared in his eyes. So sleepy. Everyone was guessing Gu Shui had such a strong support she might have a chance to turn the tables. Tang Tian grinned from ear to ear, placed his hands on his waist and raised his head, his nose pointed to the sky and laughed out loud. "All of you are still too inexperienced, but slowly, you will all have a new and deep understanding of this godlike young lad." Finished, he grabbed the two martial artists on the ground and casually threw them out. Phylan's star was under the control of Onyx Soul, but before activating the blood meridians his power was already so astonishing, which was rarely seen. Mu Lei was silent for a moment and suddenly said, "Miss, rest, I'll keep watch." Smoke lingered in the Clan Elders Association. All the elders were smoking and all of them were silent. Today was all thanks to him. Mu Lei said softly, "I never thought he would be willing to help us." Gu Shui at that time was just a breeding machine. Being praised, Tang Tian was elated. He looked left and right, seeing that the ground was filled with injured people. He had nowhere to stand and said loudly, "I'm sorry, I need to rest, I'll send you guys out first." He knew there was still a fierce battle ahead. He needed to recover quickly. If his own bloodline was able to produce a descendant with the snow rainbow blood meridians, then this bloodline would become the undisputed #1 bloodline of the Gu family. The great clan elder made the final decision. This cannot happen again. Such an extraordinary person. Gu Shui's heart was extremely weird. Not only Mu Lei could see it, all the restless martial artists could also see it, as if a bucket of ice water was poured on their heads. They did not dare to act blindly without thinking. Black Mountain City was the Gu family's Black Mountain City. The Gu family was the biggest family in Black Mountain City. Their power in Black Mountain City was deeply rooted. No one could shake it. Such a person of unknown origin, how can we let him be by Gu Shui's side? Gu and Xiong said with a straight face. Tang Tian was already sleeping like a pig. This fellow, he must have been faking it. All of you, open your eyes wide. Tang Tian used his thumb to point at himself, his face fierce. From today onwards she will be under my protection. Whoever does not know what's good for him, I will break his legs. Mu Lei laughed. Don't worry, miss, old Lei will not die. The reason why Gu and Xiong was able to sit on the clan leader position was because he had the support of more than 3 clan elders. But on the matter of Gu Shui, none of the clan elders supported him. Tang Tian posed for a long time but no one came up. He was finally getting impatient. To a school tyrant with a long history facing such a situation, he was very familiar with it. Mu Lei was secretly shocked. Such strong arm strength. They are scared out of their wits. There is nothing to fear. Mu Lei's tone was filled with disdain, but thinking about his valiant performance against Tang Tian, it did not seem to be any better. His old face turned red and he added, "With me guarding, don't worry, Mississippi," he said without hesitation. "That's right. The benefits of the various branches cannot be placed above the Gu family's benefits." looking at Gu Shui who was sitting in a daze and Mu Lei who was acting tough. He waved his hand. I'm going to sleep first, so sleepy. Gu and Xiong knew that the great clan elder's words were for him to hear. The destruction of Gu Shui's branch was directly related to him. But the other clan elders all agreed. Gu Shui did not know how to describe her feelings at the moment. Mu Lei cleared his mind of distracting thoughts, sat cross-legged and revolved his true power. The two martial artists who fell to the ground immediately fainted. Tang Tian's speed was extremely fast, his hands were like the wind, only to see a sky full of people flying, and very quickly the courtyard was cleared. The higher-ups of the Gu family had just experienced an intense upheaval and Gu Shui's branch was affected, and thus suffered a tragedy. A pure and innocent heart? Anyway, no matter which branch Gu Shui chooses to our Gu family, there is no loss. The great clan elder said in a deep voice. But there is one thing that is without a doubt: Gu Shui's safety must be guaranteed. This concerns the future of our Gu family. On this point, there is no room for negotiation. A centipede dies but does not fall down. Gu Shui's parents were plotted against, but that did not mean that Gu Shui's branch was completely annihilated. There were still many people in Gu Shui's branch outside of Black Mountain City, and did not suffer any losses. After a while, Gu Shui's expression seemed to have thawed and she laughed. Tang Tian's shocking performance, even Mu Lei could not help but feel his heart palpitate when he thought about it. Luckily he did not meet such a terrifying opponent. But he immediately reacted and laughed out loud. You guys must have been shocked by this godlike young man, right? Every school tyrant were all familiar with such lines. Mu Lei's battle experience was plentiful, his eyes were sharp, and with one look he could see that the martial artists no longer had the desire to initiate an attack. They no longer had the courage. I heard on her way home she was ambushed by the curtain of the night swordsman Xia. God bless our Gu family. This kind of thing will definitely not happen a second time. The third clan elder's eyes were filled with killing intent. Seems like we have to sound the alarm bells. Humph, how can our Gu family be bullied by others? The matter of Gu Shui possessing the hidden snow rainbow blood meridians had already spread throughout Black Mountain City. Everyone understood the Gu family could fight for it, but if outsiders dared to have any intentions of getting their hands on it, they would definitely die a horrible death. As expected, all the clan elders nodded their heads in agreement. Although Tang Tian was strong, it was difficult for one fist to fight against four hands, and the rest of the people were afraid and did not move forward. Even Qilon was defeated in one move. Everyone looked at Tang Tian, their gazes became fearful. That's right. Gu Shui's tone was filled with an indescribable feeling. This was the Gu family's matter. A sentence that could be heard on the streets, under the backdrop of the injured people on the ground, under the cries of pain. It was not funny at all. Today's battle was really satisfying. The key was he had finally won a hearty victory. How amazing was that? He could finally be complacent, he could be proud of himself. Tang Tian crossed his arms, his face full of arrogance as he stood proudly at the scene. 10 seconds later the snoring was like a rising tide, getting louder and louder. As long as Gu Shui married into any of the branches, her branch would completely collapse. Seems like it would be better to bring Gu Shui back to the Gu family. This concerns the fate of our Gu family, we cannot make any mistakes. Gu and Xiong suddenly asked, who knows his background? The 5 clan elders gathered. If there was one regret, it would be that he had not comprehended the killing technique of Great Monument Palm. That's right, I was really shocked. Gu Shui swallowed her saliva, nodded her head and answered subconsciously. The clan elders looked at each other, no one knew him. Although he had saved her once again, but Gu and Xiong's lips revealed an undetectable smile. Ling Su had already made his move. That mysterious young man was dead meat. That's right. 4th clan elder's face was also gloomy. We need to retaliate. She looked at Tang Tian's face. The sleeping Tang Tian was like a baby, his mouth was wide open, looking extremely silly. There was still sparkling saliva at the corner of his mouth. She was engrossed, the corners of her mouth unconsciously curled up. She was unable to connect the mature and steady young man who had saved her life with this carefree and silly guy in front of her. Gu Shui's face was lifeless, her expression was stiff. She looked at Tang Tian who was sleeping on the ground. The Gu family's foundation was deep, outsiders could not imagine it. No one dared to laugh. Gu Shui and Mu Lei were in a daze. Their little hearts were bursting with joy. Mu Lei groaned, waking Gu Shui up. Gu Shui noticed Mu Lei's pale face and stood up in shock. "Uncle Mu, how are you?" But Tang Tian, who was feeling great, quickly threw this small flaw to the back of his head and enjoyed his victory. Chapter 138. The basic force exertion was done through the muscles, but the muscles also contained small meridians. If at the same time as the force exertion, these small meridians would also revolve at the same time, what would the result be? But this fist wind. Mu Lei was interrupted by Gu Shui's exclamation. He regained his senses, turned his face and asked with concern, "Mrs. Awake?" He was even a little stunned. A few consecutive small leg blades at an extremely fast frequency chopped onto the spear body. The two figures separated upon contact. Maybe the two could merge. "I haven't eaten breakfast yet," Tang Tian said confidently. So fast. The familiar feeling filled every part of his body. The Tantue blade just now compared to his usual Tantue blade was completely different. Although the usual Tantue blade could also condense into a blade aura, but the aura was dim and was not as strong as the Tantue blade's aura. The aura emitted by the aura was probably due to the crane body energy. The scene in front of him made him feel that it was inconceivable. If he knew that Tang Tian had trained in fundamental martial techniques for 5 years, what kind of expression would he have? He stretched lazily and with a puh sound he jumped up. He slept soundly and Tang Tian felt that his body had an endless amount of energy and was full of energy. Tang Tian's current true power could simulate 3 types of energy: vibration, crane body energy and heavenly dragon energy. Tang Tian looked around and suddenly his eyes lit up. In the corner of the courtyard there was a well. He found an intact bucket from the ruins and started to draw water. But Ling Su's reaction was just as fast. Fundamental martial techniques were only taught in the most elementary schools. In fact, most of the people at the age of 4 or 5, their parents would teach them fundamental martial techniques to build their foundation. He had a new experience. Tang Tian was ecstatic success. But today when Tang Tian looked back to experience the fundamental techniques of the physical body, he realized that the physical body and true power were not clearly separated, but had some kind of vague connection. He was pleasantly surprised. Gu Shui was awoken by Tang Tian's fist wind and sat up. When she woke up, she noticed that Tang Tian was training in martial techniques and was stunned. Fundamental martial techniques? A red tasseled silver spear like a dragon suddenly appeared. The spear retreated and the person retreated so fast that it left behind an afterimage. In such a short time he was able to complete the wrong step turn. When the true power and muscle power were activated at the same time, the originally weak fundamental martial techniques had a huge increase in power. This could be seen from the changes in the wind of the fists. Tantue blade. It was so low that even Mu Lei, who was watching from afar, could feel the faintly discernible tremors. The shock on Mu Lei's face turned into shock. Suddenly, a cold snort seemed to explode beside Mu Lei's ear. Mu Lei's face changed. Being attacked in his own territory? Gu Shui was sleeping soundly for the past few days. No matter if it was her mind or body, she was extremely tired. Gu Shui, who was sleeping soundly, had tear stains at the corner of her eyes. Tang Tian had not figured out the use of the mist, but it was obvious that the new Tantue blade had a huge increase in power. Tang Tian sighed in his heart. Although from the start, Gu Shui had displayed a calmness and experience that far exceeded her age, but her heart must be filled with sorrow. As he trained, Tang Tian became more and more serious. Under the sunlight, his angular face revealed a pondering expression. In comparison, the changes of true power could be more complex and its power was greater. The power of true power at a lower level had an obvious effect, but as the level increased, the power of true power would quickly replace the power of the body. A figure like a puff of smoke floated over slowly in a blink of an eye. It was in front of everyone. Fundamental martial techniques taught the basic techniques of releasing power, which was something every martial artist would learn. After reaching the second level, true power interfered, causing the pure power of the body to become much weaker. The blade aura and spear aura clashed, and the two of them felt an incomparably strong power and retreated. Mu Lei looked at Tang Tian in shock. Fundamental martial techniques. Tang Tian was training in fundamental martial techniques, and he did not get tired of practicing them again and again. Ling Su's fighting spirit was ignited. Such a strong opponent was not something he could meet often. Just as Tang Tian was in a daze, Suddenly a cold snort sounded out beside his ear. Following that, a sharp sound broke through the air like an alarm piercing through the sky. Ding ding ding. It turned out that the fierce words he said yesterday were for nothing. Ling Su, who was in high spirits, blurted out, "Such a powerful Tan Tue." This was the experience that Tang Tian gained in this period of time. Tang Tian was completely immersed in the fundamental martial techniques. He was familiar with the fundamental martial techniques to the bone, but to suddenly have a new discovery, that kind of unexpected ecstasy, made him forget everything. Too low. Tang Tian's strong intuition played a huge role. Almost at the same time, the taut tip of his foot did not change. Using his knee as a fulcrum, he bent his calf and in a very short range continuously swung. The white leg blade, with a faint mist and a sharp whistle, bounced up from the ground. Ding. Ling Su's expression froze on his face. When Ling Su heard this, he was stunned and blurted out, "What?" Suddenly thinking of the morning in Star Wind City, Tang Tian could not help but smile. Tang Tian's crane-style Qi manual on the circulation of true power in the small meridians had a unique point. Especially after Tang Tian cultivated the crane body energy, he was extremely familiar with the small meridians. Unbearable. Once this thought appeared, Tang Tian's heart immediately itched. Without saying anything, he got into a stance and started to practice the fundamental martial techniques. Uncle Mu, he's actually practicing fundamental martial techniques? Gu Shui's gaze turned to Tang Tian, full of confusion. Tang Tian squinted his eyes, but he had just broken through. His aura was at its peak. He was not afraid and used another Tan Tue blade. Tang Tian immediately noticed the change. Tang Tian suddenly shouted, "Hey brat, rest for 10 minutes first." The leg blade and spear tip were about to cross again. Tang Tian was at the 5th level. His pure physical strength had gradually lost its power. And as his level got higher, this phenomenon would become more obvious. Ling Su's eyes flashed a ray of light. The sharp tip of the spear strangely jumped, brushed past the leg blade and went straight for Tang Tian. Mu Lei was slightly surprised and immediately looked back. Spirit cards were indeed very convenient, but it was ultimately the senior's own understanding. There were too many personal things in it. For the same martial technique, different people's understanding would be different, and the spirit cards they created would also be different. Without thinking, Tang Tian's left leg suddenly exerted strength. His whole body was thrown out, rushing towards Ling Su, his right leg in midair, exerting strength in his calf. In one breath, he continuously released 7 leg blades. Tang Tian opened his eyes, the morning sun, sprinkling on his face, warm and comfortable. I haven't practiced fundamental martial techniques for a long time. There's actually someone who can practice fundamental martial techniques to such a level. This bold idea popped out. Tang Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. The straight tip of his foot swept out a vast expanse of white light, a faint fog floating in the air. The surprise on Gu Shui's face disappeared. She smiled sweetly at Mu Lei. "And I slept very well." Fundamental martial techniques that were infused with different strengths had completely different styles. Fundamental martial techniques were not Tang Tian's goal, but if he was able to fuse true power and muscle strength in higher-level martial techniques like Great Monument Palm, would it increase the power of the martial techniques? Voila, the bone-chilling cold well water drenched him from head to toe. All the pores on his body contracted, all the sleepiness suddenly disappeared. Facing the incoming leg blades, the cold aura of the spear tip, like raindrops, poured out. Do not blindly believe in spirit cards, even if it is a gold-grade spirit card. With a flick of his wrist, the silver spear was like lightning. The sharp and cold spear tip drew a straight line in the air, straight towards Tang Tian's face. Ding ding ding. There was a name in this Tan Tue called leg blades. Ling Su did not expect that his tried and tested move would actually be blocked by Tang Tian in such a way. He could not help but be surprised. Tang Tian's face turned gloomy. As a successful and old-school tyrant, Tang Tian deeply understood. If he did not immediately defend his right to rule over the territory, very soon those restless people yesterday would lose their fear. Ling Su retreated 5 steps, stabilizing his body, his heart trembling. Such a sharp Tan Tue blade. The arrogance on his face immediately disappeared, and he once again sized up Tang Tian. But Tang Tian did not think so much. This guy who came out of nowhere, one look and he knew that he was not a good person and dared to make a move on him. This whimsical idea made Tang Tian try it out. Different from others who had their hands and feet tied, Tang Tian from the start was not restricted by those rules. For example, when he trained in the crane body energy, the rank 5 crane-style Qi manual gave him a feeling that it was not right, so he tinkered with it himself and successfully raised the crane body energy to rank 5. Mu Lei was alarmed by Tang Tian's movements. He opened his eyes slightly, looked at Tang Tian and then closed his eyes again. The sharp and concentrated clashing sound shook people's ears to the point of numbness. Tang Tian then saw the person clearly. The tip of his foot rubbed on the ground. The tip of his foot was numb. But seeing Ling Su, he was not much better, desperately swinging his palm. Mu Lei nodded. He has been training for a while. His foundation is very solid. No, it should be said that it is very perfect. This is the first time I have seen such a perfect fundamental martial technique. He should have spent a lot of time on it. Suddenly, the sound of Tang Tian's fist wind started to change. The sound of the fist wind was not right. To be able to defeat people like Big Wei and Qilon, he was definitely not an ordinary person. A powerful genius woke up in the morning and actually started to train in fundamental martial techniques. 7 blade auras crisscrossed in the air, forming a blade screen. The power of the calf blade was small, but the frequency was high, extremely fast. Like a torrential rain, it continuously slashed on the spear body. The spear body swayed, brushing past Tang Tian's cheek. Tang Tian's heart moved. Without thinking, he twisted his waist and flicked his legs. He did not know if it was because he had not trained for a long time, but the fundamental martial technique seemed to be a little rusty. But after all, he had trained for a full 5 years. Very quickly, Tang Tian found back the feeling of the past. Mu Lei's pupils suddenly shrunk. The fist wind was indeed not right. The fist wind of the fundamental martial techniques was the most common fist wind. After all, the fundamental martial techniques were straightforward, emphasizing the basic force and not the changes of the moves. Chapter 139. Ling Su raised the bucket in his hand. Voila, a bucket of water was poured over. I can't accept it. Ling Su was unyielding. You are humiliating a martial artist's dignity. Upon hearing these 2 words, Ling Su almost burst into tears. Ling Su, who did not say a word, raised his eyelids and said, Please report to Great Clan Elder. Ling Su cannot follow by your side in the future. Please find someone else. Half an hour later, Tang Tian and Ling Su's faces were full of bruises, half lying on the ground. Both of their bellies were as round as watermelons. Gu Shuer and Mu Lei were in a daze. They completely could not understand the situation in front of them. Then there's no other way. Ling Su stood up, his expression solemn. I will not go against Great Clan Elder's orders. The bodyguard who came with Ling Su immediately broke out in cold sweat and ran back to report to Great Clan Elder. After a while, he ran back with his face full of sweat. Not only did they not understand, the spectators from afar were all dumbstruck. It was a completely one-sided battle. Tang Tian did not use true power and completely used brute force, but with Tang Tian's brute force, when such a fist landed on his body, it was extremely painful. Stop dreaming. Tang Tian said lazily, This is my territory and you came to my territory to clamor. How am I going to be the boss in the future? Tang Tian stopped and looked at Ling Su below him and asked fiercely, Do you submit? Ling Su panicked. Hey, you can't do that, you can't do that. Little guy. Let me tell you, those who dare to splash me will all be beaten up like dead dogs. He went to the well with a fierce look and picked up his silver spear. Seeing the reflection of the badly battered face, Ling Su's face turned black. Bastard. If you're not hungry, then I'll eat it all. Tang Tian said vaguely as he gnawed on the roasted meat. Just as he was about to open his mouth to explain, Tang Tian had already pounced on him while howling. Ling Su, who was in high spirits, suddenly realized that he was holding a water bucket instead of the silver spear that he was familiar with. His expression immediately changed. Wait a minute. This. Half an hour, just half an hour. Tang Tian yawned even louder. Ling Su felt like he was going crazy. If you don't get up, don't blame me for being rude. Mu Lei's expression changed drastically. With Ling Su's reputation, he believed that no one would dare to refuse such a request. Lord Ling Su, the Great Elder is urging you to hurry up. Not allowing Ling Su a chance to refute, Tang Tian gave him another round of beating for a full 2 minutes. Ling Su hugged his silver spear with a black face. Ling Su completely panicked. Once he thought of himself naked in front of the whole city, he immediately felt a chill and finally gave in. I give in. I give in. Don't talk nonsense. Quickly get up and fight to the death. Only the victor has the right. Ling Su wished he could go up and stab a few holes in Tang Tian's body. But his pride as an expert prevented him from doing so. Ling Su said angrily, a gentleman can be killed but not humiliated. Tang Tian was infuriated. He pointed at Ling Su and scolded, I treated you to roasted meat and you actually poured water on me. Bastard. Roasted meat. Do you give in? There was actually such a person in this world. Ling Su was so angry that his teeth itched. But his pride as a martial artist prevented him from doing anything like sneak attacks. Bastard. Ling Su's body was not very stable due to the flying bird vortex. The dense Tan Tue blade aura had already occupied his vision. In a moment of desperation, he subconsciously raised the wooden bucket in his hand. I really shouldn't have accepted this mission today. Ling Su turned a deaf ear to Tang Tian's friendly gesture. He sat down beside Gu Shui and hugged his silver spear tightly. Tang Tian did not have any intention of stopping. His attacks were like a violent storm, smashing down on Tang Tian's face. As he attacked, he scolded loudly. Gulp. In a short 10 seconds, Ling Su's face had completely changed. This was the first time he heard someone asking for a timeout before a fight. The reason was that he did not eat breakfast. The whole crowd exploded. That was Ling Su, the silver spear Ling Su. Hey hey hey. Ling Su desperately wanted to stop. You treat my good intentions as ill intent. I treated you to roasted meat. You actually drenched me with water. Ling Su was simply bursting with anger. This was too outrageous. Everyone who was watching the fight were already like clay statues. They stared dumbfoundedly at the scene in front of them that completely overturned their understanding of the world. How could there be such an evil person in the world? Heavens, what was going on? The battle intent in his body started to rise. He pointed his silver spear directly at Tang Tian. His tone became sinister. Come on. Then let us have a real fight. That fellow who could not retaliate and could only wail in pain. Tang Tian was emboldened. Hey, you ate my roasted meat and drenched me with water. You still have the right to talk about a martial artist's dignity? Ling Su thought about it and immediately felt that he had gone overboard. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him. This was too humiliating. He really fell asleep quickly. But hee. Who are you calling a brat? Ling Su flew into a rage. He pointed his silver spear at Tang Tian. So sleepy. When he saw Ling Su's complacent expression and the bucket of water in his hands, Tang Tian immediately reacted. Gu Shui, who had been very calm all along, looked at Ling Su's face that was filled with grief and anger. She immediately felt the pressure on her. Suddenly, a figure flashed in front of her. Tang Tian also sat down and laughed. You drenched me with water. I beat you up. We are even now. Then 20 minutes it is. Or 10 minutes is fine too. Tang Tian's eyes were filled with tears. The strong drowsiness made him almost unable to open his eyes. Tang Tian's expression immediately changed. He immediately jumped down from Ling Su's body. He pulled up Ling Su, whose face was bruised and swollen. He very affectionately helped Ling Su to pat the dust off his body. From today onwards we are a family. Come, let us continue to eat roasted meat. I must beat all the food that this damn bastard ate into his stomach later. You are actually not sleepy after a meal? Tang Tian yawned, his eyes filled with tears. He said vaguely, tired to death. Let me sleep first. Hey, don't think that you can bribe me with a meal of roasted meat. Ling Su half propped himself up, his face revealing an incomparably satisfied expression. He said lazily, however, Great Elder wants me to bring Lady Shui back. Don't stop me. I will pretend that I never met you. When he carried the bucket of water and walked in front of Tang Tian's snoring sounds could already be heard. Tang Tian's bucket of water was still in its original position. Without saying anything, Ling Su flew to the side of the well. He put down his silver spear and picked up the bucket of water, filling it to the brim. Not satisfied? Then I'll strip you naked and make you sleep. Tang Tian also felt a little tired, but he had his ways. After a long time, the Gu family guards who were watching the battle suddenly realized that Ling Su was sitting there motionlessly. He actually had no intention of making another move. Tang Tian began to beat him up again. His fists pierced into his flesh, making a pa-pa sound. It was so painful that Ling Su's expression became distorted. On the contrary, Gu Shui was quite calm. Tang Tian was stunned. So satisfied. Ling Su wished he could lie down at this moment. The sharp blade flashed past the tip of his nose, drawing a line of blood. He was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. The pitiful Ling Su, his entire body's martial arts were all on the silver-red tasseled spear. He who was unarmed, struggled under Tang Tian's torrential attacks. The bone-chilling well-water drenched Tang Tian. In his dreams, Tang Tian suddenly felt that he had fallen into an ice cave. At that time he screamed and jumped up from the ground. Are you satisfied? That guy who was being ridden by someone else. That guy who was beaten into a pig's head. Despair, you bastard. You're tired of living. Suddenly he saw the well from the corner of his eye. His eyes immediately lit up. This is life. Tang Tian's emotions floated in the sunlight. Ling Su cursed and rushed over. Before sitting down, he pounced on the roasted meat. Ah, indeed, no discord, no concord. Tang Tian turned a deaf ear to him. Fight my ass. Tang Tian sneered. His hand began to touch Ling Su's belt. Without saying a word, Tang Tian gave him another round of punches. Ling Su's words came to an abrupt end. The rain-like punches lasted for a full 30 seconds before stopping. His stomach made an unknown sound. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. Ling Su's dark face immediately turned red. The wooden barrel instantly shattered. Nonsense. Tang Tian did not even bat an eyelid. His tone was so lazy that others could not help but wonder if he had fallen asleep. These fellows' hearing must be very good, damn it. Ling Su felt inexplicably sad. Boss. Ling Su hastily dodged, but the furious Tang Tian's attacks were simply suffocating. Aha, why don't you make a sound? Hey kid, if you're hungry, come and eat with us. Tang Tian turned his face and waved the roasted meat in his hand in a friendly manner. He extended an invitation to Ling Su. Tang Tian was so sleepy that he could barely open his eyes. Additionally, he did not sense any danger when Ling Su came to stab him. He had never encountered such a scoundrel before. However, Tang Tian refused to budge. The tip of his spear was about to stab Tang Tian's body, but Tang Tian remained indifferent. Tang Tian was instantly elated. Ah, if you had surrendered earlier, wouldn't everything have been fine? Come, call me boss. A small vortex like a flock of white birds flew towards Ling Su. This was not the end. Tang Tian's Tan Tui drew a crisscrossed blade aura, attacking Ling Su head-on. This. When Ling Su was hit by Tang Tian's great monument palm, he immediately fell to the ground. Following that, Tang Tian's fists smashed down like a storm. You only want to beat me up once? Tang Tian violently beat him up. The anger in his heart was finally appeased. The pitiful Ling Su was already beaten beyond recognition. It was as if he was trampled by a group of elephants. Ling Su's eyes twitched. The surrounding temperature dropped. Gu Shui felt even more pressure. His entire life was ruined by barbecued meat. Ling Su swore that he would never eat barbecued meat again. Not satisfied. If you have the ability. Ling Su retorted angrily. Even though he was far away, the smell of barbecued meat still entered his nose. Too hateful. He actually ate barbecued meat so early in the morning. Ling Su's heart was filled with hatred. The Elders Guild had been in session for the entire night. He had not eaten anything the entire night. His stomach was now empty. But now he had to watch a bastard eat big mouthfuls of meat in front of him. Ling Su did not expect that his goodwill would be rejected. He sat up straight and his expression turned serious. Are you serious? The furious Tang Tian immediately used the flying bird vortex. You are dead meat today. You are destined to repent for your actions today for the rest of your life. Ling Su did not utter a word. Chapter 140. Tang Tian was immediately embarrassed. He felt guilty. Instigating defection was definitely not within his expectations. He had caused him to lose his job for no reason. He felt apologetic. Ling Su's figure was tall but slightly slimmer than Tang Tian. His hair was blue like the sea, extremely rare. He had a pair of orange-red eyes like a pair of burning flames. Speak. Ling Su said in a muffled voice. It's better not to provoke. After a fierce battle, the two of them were beyond recognition, staring at each other without showing any signs of weakness. "I'm your boss, you actually dared to make a move on your boss? Insubordination." Tang Tian scolded. Ling Su's entire body froze. The two of them looked at each other. They felt that they were unable to understand the strange thoughts of the two people in front of them. The entire place was dead silent when Ling Su publicly admitted it. It brought a shock and impact to everyone. It was incomparable. In these 2 years, Ling Su had already used his strong performance to firmly occupy the position of the strongest martial artist in the Gu clan. His but seemed to have taken root, sitting there not moving at all. Gu Shui suddenly remembered Ling Su had another nickname, Angry Ling Su. Tang Tian, who was sitting at the side, had an innocent look on his face as he thought to himself, "I didn't do anything. This guy's salary can't be too high. Justice? Then where's your pity?" Tang Tian glared angrily. "Asshole. I'll kill you." Ling Su felt as though something was gushing out of his chest. He felt that he was unprecedentedly strong. Even if he had to die for it, he would not even frown. "My teacher once said the thing that can allow you to step on the peak is not a rare spirit card, nor is it a mountain of star coins, but the belief that you hold on to no matter what the situation is." Ling Su glared angrily. "Shut up." Tang Tian's mutterings came from behind, and Ling Su almost fell to the ground. "Pity, pity." Tang Tian writhed on the ground as if he was having a cramp. His soft moans drilled into Ling Su's ears. Ling Su's neck turned around like a machine. The murderous look on his face made his blue hair stand upright. His orange-red eyes were completely ignited, and his gloomy face was like countless flames flashing in the dense dark clouds. Ling Su pounced on Tang Tian like a ferocious tiger. Tang Tian raised his head and didn't have the slightest intention to get up. He said as if it was a matter of course, "Chia said that I should never fight with a man who just lost his job. I think what she said makes sense." For some reason, after Ling Su said these words, he only felt indescribably relaxed. This muddle-headed life was finally coming to an end. Great Elder came out from the crowd. He stared at Ling Su and his eyes flashed with anger. Gu Shui hesitated for a moment but still said softly, "Thank you." This bastard was too shameless. Too spineless. The most infuriating thing was, did he think that she had no intelligence? The four of them sat together and didn't say a word. Great Elder's face was green and red, but he didn't say anything. He was very clear about Ling Su's temper. If this guy really rushed up regardless of anything, no one here could stop him. Kakaka. Ling Su didn't say anything. He glanced at Tang Tian. Seeing Tang Tian's hesitant expression, he said in a bad mood, "Say what you want to say." Ling Su looked at Great Elder and said word by word, "I'm sorry, I found myself again." Great Elder's face changed. He retreated in panic. In a moment of desperation, Great Elder shouted, "Ling Su, don't tell me you want to make a move on me?" Killing intent surged in Great Elder's heart. If he didn't immediately counterattack, the foundation that he had painstakingly built for decades would collapse like an avalanche. This was something he was absolutely unable to accept. He didn't say a word. He turned and walked to a place not far from Tang Tian. He hugged his silver spear and sat down. "Why?" Ling Su was startled. He tilted his head and thought for a moment. "You're unhappy. If you're unhappy, you can leave." Ling Su's ferocious reputation was not something that Tang Tian could compare to. No one dared to touch King Ling Yama's old man. Tang Tian silently leaned towards Gu Shui. After a while, he couldn't help but ask, "Don't you think this is a little too rash?" But Ling Su actually betrayed them. "Why?" Great Elder's voice trembled. Gu Shui and Mu Lei stared dumbfoundedly at the fierce battle that was unfolding in front of them. Ling Su hugged his silver spear and glanced at Tang Tian. He said in a muffled voice, "What does it have to do with you?" Ling Su was stunned. But in the next second he rushed in front of Tang Tian like a fierce tiger. He roared like thunder. His saliva almost sprayed on Tang Tian's face. "How can you do this? How can you? You bastard, do you only know how to use those wretched and despicable methods? If you're a man, then fight fair and square." Ling Su suddenly walked towards Great Elder and the others. Suddenly, an old and dignified voice sounded. "Ling Su, you want to leave me? I'm doing this for your own good. It's not easy to find a job these days." Tang Tian persuaded patiently. He had the tone of a boss. "You're still young. You haven't experienced enough. You don't know enough about the cruelty of reality. Hey, is your brain fried? Tang Tian moved closer to Ling Su's ear. He said carefully, if you fall out with him, what about your salary? No one will give you a salary. What will you eat in the future? Tang Tian's intuition towards danger was very sensitive. This guy couldn't be provoked now. Tang Tian's mouth formed a no shape. He looked at Ling Su blankly. This guy actually did it for real. For any family, the departure of a master could be fatal and shake the foundation. The great elder's status in the family would also plummet because of this. Suddenly, a clear understanding rose in his heart. That's right. He had to be like this. He would never lose his beliefs. Ling Su exploded. He jumped up and pointed the silver spear in his hand at Tang Tian. He roared. Come on, you bastard. I'll teach you a lesson. Ling Su didn't even bat an eyelid. He hugged his spear. You don't have to thank me. I'm doing this for myself. The great clan elder laughed in anger. Ling Su, are you still a child? To think that such naive words would come out of your mouth. I'm so disappointed. Where did you get the money for your training? Where did your spirit cards come from? Where did the treasures come from? From the sky. Now you're complaining that I'm not doing things righteously? Huh. But if you think that no one can deal with you, you're wrong. Tang Tian's expression froze. Are you praising me, or praising me? For justice. A bastard like you should be taught a lesson. Ling Su retorted. Ling Su shook his head. I don't like to bully the weak. I'm tired of living like this. My teacher told me that as a martial artist I should be righteous and compassionate. I've never been able to satisfy my teacher. But I don't want to continue sinking. So I'll stop here. What I've done for you is worth every star coin you've paid. Gu Shui seemed to understand. But I still have to thank you. This is what I believe. This is what I like. This is the foundation of my spiritual world. Those who cross this line will be killed without mercy. This was the first time she sized up Ling Su. The street regained its peace. Were you enlightened by my beating? Oh, or did I beat you up until you found your conscience? Tang Tian's eyes lit up. It must be. Must be. I'm indeed a godlike young lad. But I'm too powerful. Ling Su hugged his spear. He sat there gloomily. His expression was unkind. He was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. Tang Tian was overjoyed. Then I'll say it. This powerful martial artist had a fiery temper. Rumor had it that he hated evil. If there was a disagreement, he would start a fight. This idiot didn't fall for it. So strange. The stiff Ling Su returned to normal. He hugged his red-embellished spear. He sat down again. That's right. For the sake of power you killed her parents. That's your problem. I can't be bothered. But you racked your brains to kidnap a girl who had just lost her parents. She'll be your breeding machine. She'll give birth to a descendant with the snow rainbow blood meridians. Ling Su's orange-red eyes lit up with flames. He pointed his spear at Tang Tian and shouted, even this asshole knows what to do. What does pity have to do with you? Ling Su was baffled. Ling Su ignored him. He walked for 7 to 8 steps before stopping. The spear in his hand pierced into the limestone floor. He swung his arm. Tila. A deep straight line extended from his feet to the other end. Great Elder's promise was powerful and resonant. He had discovered his own mistake, so he resolved it with exceptional decisiveness without the slightest bit of sloppiness. Many people in the crowd secretly applauded the Great Elder's performance. To be able to admit his mistake in front of so many people and act heroically, he was indeed a shrewd and ruthless person. She had heard of Ling Su's name more than once. Ling Su had not followed the Great Elder for a long time. He had only appeared 2 years ago. But in just 2 years he had become a famous martial artist on Phylan's star. Such a strong murderous aura. Ling Su noticed Tang Tian's expression from the corner of his eye. His mood instantly improved. Ah! Tang Tian screamed. He fell to the ground like a noodle. He twisted his body from time to time. He looked like he was in great pain. Ling Su was dumbstruck and immediately raged. Do you think I'm an idiot? Why? Unhappy. The Great Elder's voice calmed down. He thought about it. It seemed like he had not won over Ling Su enough. He tried his best to make his voice sound sincere. I did not take good care of you. I hope you can give me a chance to make up for it. No matter what you want or what ambition you have, I will support you. The Gu family will also support you fully. Money, spirit cards, treasures, blood meridians. Whatever you want, just say it. Ling Su spat out these words coldly. His gaze swept across the crowd. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. The smile on Tang Tian's face was a little stiff. He waved his hand. With an expression that said, "You don't have to mind." He laughed. I was just asking. It was really just a casual question. If you don't want to say it, I won't ask. Gu Shui was stunned by the scene in front of her. Not only her, Mu Lei's mouth was wide open. The scene in front of them made them confused. Chapter 141. Ling Su glanced at Tang Tian. I know. He wanted me to be a good person like him. Until he passed away, I didn't satisfy him. I started to wander around. From the age of 11 until now, I have been wandering around. I am getting stronger and stronger, but I am not happy. If I am not happy, I will move to another place. That's true. Tang Tian thought of the elusive Xia. The current situation was obviously not his forte. He shrugged. Then what should I do? Who can resist the Snow Rainbow bloodline? The whole Gu family knows that he proposed to my father on behalf of Gu Wu but was rejected by my father. If I did not spread the news about the Snow Rainbow bloodline, Gu Wu would have kidnapped me. The other branches would not have dared to fight with Gu Wu for me. Tang Tian said proudly, "Don't worry, this godlike young man is very strong. He is never afraid of fighting. Otherwise, how could he be your boss? Maybe I can find the starry door." Tang Tian was unconvinced. Not satisfied. Tang Tian was stunned. You are so powerful, but he is still not satisfied. Ling Su glanced at her. What can they do? Ling Su had a "do whatever you want" expression. You may be disappointed. The starry door that I came from is gone. This is an unstable star belt. Without the stability of the star stones, the starry door cannot be stabilized. Gu Shui said solemnly, "My father did not complete the research. I can only open it based on some guesses. I do not know what the final result will be. I need some preparation." Wait. Gu Shui showed a rare determination. We just need to wait for 3 days. They will definitely come back. Then you must know how to leave this place. Tang Tian's face was full of anticipation. Gu Shui saw that the two of them were about to quarrel. She quickly said, "Actually, there is another way." Of course. Ling Su looked proud. He glanced at Tang Tian with disdain. Ling Su's voice sounded like he was talking in his sleep. When I heard the news of my father's death, I knew that Gu Xiong not only wanted to be the clan leader, but he also wouldn't let me go. Gu Shui's face was pale and her brown eyes were filled with sorrow. When Ling Su saw Tang Tian frowning, he was in a good mood. Phylan Star is located in an unstable star belt. The stargate here was very unstable. In order to stabilize the stargate, it cost a lot of money, so there was a limit to the number of times it could be opened. If you want to try those unknown stargates, go ahead. However, don't blame me for not telling you. The unknown stargate on Phylan's star has changed a lot. Hey, you might not be able to come back. As expected, women should not be provoked. Well, we are the same age. Tang Tian raised his arms excitedly and cheered, "Don't worry. From today onwards, I, your boss, will protect you. We can form the young god invincible combo. Kill towards the Southern Cross constellation. Save Chia." Who? Tang Tian came over again like a curious baby. The two of them were attracted by Gu Shui's words and turned their faces at the same time. It's useless. Ling Su had been with the Great Elder for a long time, so he was very familiar with Gu Shui's situation. He hit the nail on the head. What can these people do? I can defeat them all by myself. Don't think that the Great Elder will swallow his anger. Based on my understanding of him, he will definitely fight back, and his fight back will be very fierce. How old are you now? Mu Lei couldn't help but ask. Ling Su, who was at the side, laughed mockingly. Where can she go? Once she leaves the Gu clan, she will be targeted immediately. The enemies of the Gu clan will not hesitate to kill her. Please, she has the hidden Snow Rainbow bloodline in her body. If she gives birth to a descendant, won't it be a big problem for the other clans? Even a careless person like Tang Tian could tell that Ling Su's emotions were not quite right. What do you have in mind now? Tang Tian asked Gu Shui. He suggested, we can bring you away. As long as you leave Black Mountain City, you can go anywhere you want. The empty streets were silent. Snow started to fall again. Muley was also shocked. He was actually weak in front of this bastard. It was too embarrassing. Ling Su asked, "Why don't you start now?" "Then which constellation were you in the past?" Tang Tian was curious again. "You want to leave Phylan's star?" Ling Su looked at Tang Tian and gloated. "It's not that easy to leave Phylan's star. Every clan has a quota every year to recommend young people with potential to participate in the competition. Only the top 10 are qualified to leave Phylan's star." Tang Tian used the wood from the ruins to build a shed. The four of them sat under the shed. Fortunately, the wind was not strong and they had shelter. Even the weakest Guxue was at the 4th level and above, so they did not look too bad. Tang Tian was still all right, as his knowledge of blood meridians was extremely shallow, while Ling Su was dumbstruck. He knew the value of activating the hidden blood meridians. "That bastard is too hateful." Tang Tian's eyes were filled with anger. "I will kill him." Ling Su said to himself, "I always felt that I did well enough," but he was not satisfied. That's right. I could see the dissatisfaction and disappointment in his eyes. He is a good man, a really good man. He adopted me when I was young. If not for him, I would have been eaten by the wolves in the wild. I worked very hard. I have always worked very hard. But he was still disappointed. Tang Tian frowned. He asked unwillingly, "Is there no other way?" "Don't look at how he beat up Ling Su. That was because he took advantage of him." Ling Su's eyes flashed with a cold aura. His face suddenly became serious. "Southern Cross constellation." Guxue looked at Mu Lei apologetically. She explained, "This was one of the reasons why my father was killed." I don't know how Gu Xiong found out about this. Because Gu Xiong came to ask for Gu Wu's hand in marriage. My father and Gu Xiong had a bad relationship. Since he came to ask for Gu Xiong's hand in marriage, my father and I guessed that he might know something. Gu Shui nodded. She looked at Tang Tian quietly. "Then who did you learn your martial techniques from?" Tang Tian asked. Her calm tone made Tang Tian feel a chill down his spine. Tang Tian was surprised. "You're not from Phylan's star?" He was very disappointed in me. Ling Su, who was hugging his silver spear, looked afar. Amidst the fluttering snowflakes, he seemed to be in a daze. He muttered, "He was always disappointed in me." Ling Su glanced at Tang Tian. He pretended that he did not hear anything. "Nonsense." Ling Su snorted. Ling Su shook his head. He hugged his silver spear. His body curled up into a ball. His mood was gloomy. He was very unhappy with me. The fact that I have a hidden bloodline was actually discovered by my father when I was very young. All these years he had been researching on how to activate the hidden blood meridians. Because he was worried that the news of my hidden blood meridians would leak out, he did it very discreetly. Even Uncle Mu did not know about it. Guxue explained. Guxue shook her head. "I can't leave. No wonder he was so strong. Your teacher must be very powerful." Mu Lei sighed. "To be able to teach such an outstanding student like you, he must be very pleased." The snowflakes fell quietly. In his vision, those familiar scenes quietly floated up from his memory. Why? Tang Tian did not understand. Even Mu Lei was moved. 17. Ling Su was expressionless. "Wait. But we still underestimated his ruthlessness. Now that I think about it, we were too naive. If father could really activate my snow rainbow blood meridians, then father would most likely become the new clan leader." Gu Xiong was determined to become the clan leader. How could he allow such an accident to happen? The night gradually fell. "I'm asking you a question." Tang Tian persevered. "What did this bastard say just now?" Mu Lei did not say anything. He only bit his lips. "My teacher." Ling Su's stiff face became gentler. Ling Su's eyes twitched. All the sadness in his heart immediately disappeared. This rascal was indeed an expert at destroying the atmosphere. "Miss." When Mu Lei heard that there was danger, he immediately revealed a look of objection. Tang Tian patted Ling Su's shoulder righteously. "I'm your boss." Which boss isn't familiar with their lackeys? Wa Aries, a big constellation. "No." Gu Shui shook her head. "Leave him to me. I want to personally send him off." Gu Shui turned and said softly, "Uncle Mu, rather than being humiliated by others, I would rather try. Even if I die, I'm not afraid." Mu Lei and Gu Shui were in disbelief. In their eyes, Ling Su was so young. He already had such a powerful strength. If he was not satisfied, then how strict was Ling Su's teacher? Wondering. Tang Tian's eyes lit up. Then you must have been to many places. This time not only was Tang Tian surprised, even Gu Shui and Mu Lei were surprised. I've never been to school. Ling Su's face turned cold. It was the same as what Mu Lei and the rest had said. Aries. Ling Su was slightly annoyed. Why are you being so wishy-washy? Godlike young invincible combination. Ling Su, what did you do in the past? Tang Tian, who was free, asked Ling Su curiously. He felt that Ling Su was an interesting person. He could even be compared to a Maori. Wandering. Ling Su unwillingly spat out these two words. Tell me. Since everyone is bored, the night is long. Tang Tian had a gossipy expression on his face. When you were in school, you were very powerful, right? Ling Su's face turned gloomy. The corner of his eyes twitched. He was on the verge of going berserk. Being called boss was definitely not a good memory. Frem. Ling Su glared at him. My clansmen. Gu Shui explained, if this house completely collapses, their situation will become even worse. They don't have any powerful experts, but their numbers are not small. They are also a force. The activation of the recessive blood meridians, that meant. Mu Lei and Gu Shui were shocked. The 17-year-old Ling Su had actually been wandering for 6 years. They could not imagine an 11-year-old child wandering outside fighting in the adult world. Tang Tian was puzzled. Why are you looking at me? Then we wait now? Tang Tian asked Gu Shui. Gu Shui quietly narrated. Ling Su rolled his eyes. You are such a dark and wretched guy. When you meet a real person, don't pee in your pants. Chapter 142. Find someone to lead the way. Hua Rong said indifferently, the earlier we settle it, the earlier we can relax. If there's any business in the future, great clan elder, please take care of us brothers. Gu and Xiong snorted coldly. Why wouldn't he dare? In the entire family, the only one I have no chance of winning is him, this old fellow. Don't be fooled by his usual silence. Once he makes a move, he will definitely not give anyone a chance. The butler had a bitter look on his face. Xia rejected, seems like the rumors are true. He had many dealings with Ling Su. Star coins, spirit cards, star rocks, etc. were all given to Ling Su by him. Ling Su's treatment in the first branch was definitely second to none. Then I'm relieved. The great clan elder forced a smile. Hua Sha was ugly, taller than Hua Rong by a head. His body shape was more powerful. His bulging muscles made people feel a sense of terror. Standing there, he was like an iron mountain standing in front of him, a strong sense of oppression, like a pair of invisible hands strangling your throat, making you unable to breathe. His weapon was an extremely heavy double-headed mace, which he carried casually. Tang Tian pretended not to hear, looking up to the sky, and laughed. With that glance from Hua Rong, the great clan elder felt as though his heart was gripped by a pair of hands, and almost stopped beating. He was a decisive person and knew what to do at this moment. Bing ignored Tang Tian but stared at Ling Su. What else did your teacher say? The two brothers were able to enter the top 50 of Phylan's star at the same time. They were the only ones. Either one of them to the Black Mountain City was an absolute expert. No one could stop him. Everything was in his control, including Gu Shui. Who is this fellow? The great clan elder revealed a satisfied look. With them taking action, I'm relieved. Remember to remind them not to harm Gu Shui. I want him alive. This is my mistake. The great clan elder regained his composure and said in a low voice, I took too little care of Ling Su. How can such a genius be won over with just money? I was too careless. Tell me, what kind of person is Ling Su? The first elder couldn't help but be shocked and pleasantly surprised. Hua Rong's words were casual, but it gave people an extremely strong confidence. He could feel the powerful aura coming from the other party. This level of aura. So strong. Tang Tian patted Ling Su's shoulder and consoled him. Young lad, you must be open-minded. Oh my god, you actually stooped to the level of a spirit general? Yes. The steward replied respectfully. And there were two of them. In next to no time, the remuneration was sent over, and Hua Rong glanced at it before putting it away with satisfaction. Two names popped up in Gu Wu's mind and his face turned pale. Gu Wu and Gu and Xiong hurriedly ran over. The two towering men, led by a martial artist, walked towards the ruins in a relaxed manner. What kind of person was Ling Su? Huarong 1. 85 tall, strong and powerful, his brown hair draped over his shoulders, his upper body naked, his chiseled muscles glowing a bronze color, his gaze cold. He held a copper rod in his hand. Ling Su's eyes suddenly widened as if he was ignited. He flew into a rage. You're the little kid. Your whole family is made up of little kids. Invite them in. The first elder suppressed the joy in his heart and said hurriedly. He stood up to welcome them. Even the stupidest person would know that the first elder was only preparing his counterattack. Once he was done, what awaited Ling Su and the rest would definitely be an extremely swift and fierce counterattack with the weight of Mount Tai. Huarong was slightly surprised at the first elder's straightforwardness. He nodded, as expected of the first elder. You're straightforward. Us brothers won't be long-winded. They won't live past today. Bing's gaze was fixed on Ling Su. Huaxia grinned. He looked silly but was like a wild beast. One day later they will be here. The housekeeper gritted his teeth. Ling Su and that brat, they won't be able to come up with any tricks. The housekeeper's face was ashen and he roared in the hall. He was the first elder's trusted aide and had followed him for 40 years. More than half of the affairs of the first branch had to go through his hands. Even the few sons of the first elder did not have as much authority as him. First elder, they're here. The housekeeper's voice was trembling. Tang Tian was shocked and immediately stood up. He's called Bing, my spirit general. Tang Tian was shocked. Wow, your teacher is so powerful. He must have guessed that there's a godlike young man in Southern Cross constellation, right? Yes. The housekeeper was also excited. They are willing to accept this order. Although the price is high, but the top-notch martial artists are only the two of them. The good thing is that although the price is high, the Hua brothers have a good reputation and are easier to deal with than Xia. He had long seen Gu Shui as his and was determined to get her. But it was not only because of Gu Shui's recessive snow rainbow blood meridians, Gu Shui's beauty. These few days kept appearing in his mind and he could not sleep at night. Aries constellation. Bing was trying his best to recall. Suddenly, wait a minute, he turned around and stared at Tang Tian with an unfriendly expression. What do you mean by lowering yourself to the level of a spirit general? Gu Wenxiong's face was ashen and he muttered to himself, as expected. In comparison, Ling Su was too lacking. Two majestic figures appeared at the door and the light from the door was immediately blocked. The two walked in front of the first elder. A strong sense of oppression came straight at him. Even the first elder, who was used to many big scenes, could not help but feel his heart tremble. His gasp was mixed with a strong tremble. It's too quiet. I feel like I can't breathe. Gu Wu stood in front of the window, looking down at the empty street, his tone revealing a tinge of nervousness. Suddenly, De Wei, who had been observing the street, shouted, "They're out." This was a real strong martial artist. Gu Wu was stunned and immediately screamed, "Don't tell me the first elder wants to kidnap Gu Shui too? He dares." Gu Wenxiong shook his head. The first elder will not do something he has no confidence in. You. The steward did not expect Huarong to be so unruly. His eyes flashed. He wanted to tell everyone, those who dared to betray him only had one ending: death. Looking at the two quarreling, Gu Shui, who was playing with Yaya, suddenly felt, how good it would be if time stopped at this moment. Hua brothers. The first elder heard of this name and his eyes lit up. The two brothers Huarong and Hua Shao? That's the Hua brothers. The first elder said decisively, we have to be fast. The earlier we settle it, the more advantageous it will be for us. The later we wait, the more passive we will be. The first elder muttered. To be able to escape from Xia, their abilities cannot be underestimated. What about the rest? Suddenly, a figure appeared beside Tang Tian. Who is your teacher? Let's not think about it. The first elder shook his head and sighed. To make such a mistake once, we have to pay a heavy price. Now think about how to remedy it. Have you managed to contact them? All the eyes that were staring at the street were overwhelmed with shock. Ling Su suddenly stood up and put on a defensive stance, his pupils constricted. Who are you? My teacher told me before. Ling Su revealed a look of reminiscence. Don't provoke the strong martial artists of the 13 palaces, and people related to Southern Cross constellation. When the two of them left, the first elder sat back on the sofa. Only then did he realize unknowingly his entire body was drenched in sweat and he felt weak. "We have already paid the deposit," the steward said. As expected of one of the top 50 strong martial artists in the entire Phylan Star. Gu Wu forced himself to calm down. "It's not that easy. Ling Su and that mysterious fellow are not to be trifled with, and there's still Mu Lei." "Little friend," Hua Rong said expressionlessly, "where are our things?" The unusual silence revealed that this was the calm before the storm. Ling Su knew that Bing was not in danger and kept his spear, but he was unhappy with Bing's gaze and snorted, "I forgot." Hua Rong acted as though he did not hear anything. His pair of cold eyes gazed at the first elder. "We are very busy and have no time to delay with you guys." The Hua brothers. Gu and Xiong did not have his usual calmness. Sitting on the chair, his face was gloomy and laughed bitterly. "This time we have miscalculated Ling Su's betrayal, just happened to give this old fellow an excuse to exert his strength, and we have wasted our efforts." Really? Huh. Your foresight is indeed not bad." In front of Ling Su's black face, the elated Tang Tian continued to speak to Bing. "Hey uncle, don't be so fierce, it's not good to scare little kids." "Yes." Tang Tian's face was strange. You've heard of the Southern Cross constellation?" He said to Hua Sha, "Let's go." "You want to go to the Southern Cross constellation?" Ling Su stared at Tang Tian's face as though there was a flower on Tang Tian's face and did not blink. "I'm counting on the two of you." In front of such strong martial artists, the first elder did not dare to put on airs. "Spirit General?" Ling Su looked at Bing suspiciously. "Your Spirit General is the same as you, quite different." Tang Tian's face had an expression of as expected, and said to Bing, "See, I told you." The butler was stunned. He could not help but recall. He said uncertainly, "Slightly boring, not really talkative, not very happy, seems to be uninterested in anything." Ling Su, this ingrate. When did we ever owe him anything? He actually changed sides. Asshole. We can't let him go like this, definitely not. The first elder raised his hand to stop the butler from scolding and said calmly, "Sooner or later it will have to be given. I have confidence in the two of you. Go bring the money that we have prepared." The cold aura that belonged to a strong martial artist pressured every corner of the room. The entire Black Mountain City was abnormally quiet. All the families were restraining their own families. The prosperous Black Mountain City was even a little withered. The huge street was empty, not a single person. "The others who are willing to accept this job are only the Hua brothers," the butler said. The first elder of the Gu clan. Among the elders of the Gu clan, his prestige was unparalleled. It was under his management the power of the first branch was much more outstanding than the other branches. Chapter 143. Boiling fresh blood and fighting spirit was boiling hot. Scram. Ling Su was enraged. But he suddenly tilted his head and asked, "Are they stronger or Xia?" Hua Sha dragged the mace backwards. He was like a wild beast running wildly. The mace rubbed against the ground behind him and created dazzling sparks. He dragged the sparks along the way and ran madly. Dong. Tang Tian's last step on the ground was like a cannonball and suddenly disappeared. Defeat him. The mace with dazzling sparks was flung out from his right leg. But everyone could not help but hold their breaths. Their gazes, without exception, were all fixed on the Hua brothers. Their eyes were filled with fanatical anticipation. They had no doubts about the outcome. But they wanted to see with their own eyes, these top fighters of Phylan's Star who only existed in legends and rarely seen in person, how magnificent they would win. The crazy murderous intent on Hua Sha's face suddenly froze. Hua Sha's pupils suddenly contracted. Tang Tian's last step coincidentally struck at the moment when he launched his attack. He had no time to change his move. Well said. Domineering. Tang Tian clapped with a gratified expression. "As the boss, I admire you very much. Do you want the left side or the right side? You choose first in case you have another excuse when I save you later." "Kill them," Hua Sha said in a low voice. Top 50. Tang Tian's expression also turned solemn. "This guy is not simple. Both sides are not even on the same level." Without hesitation, Tang Tian used all his strength and threw himself out. Watching Ling Su and Tang Tian coming towards them, Hua Rong's indifferent face revealed a mocking smile. "I can't tell, our two little friends are quite brave. Do not belittle this half a second in a battle between experts. A flaw of 1/10 of a second was already rather dangerous. So this is what a top-notch expert looks like. Before Ling Su opened his mouth, Tang Tian pointed his thumb at himself and said with a smug face, "Ling Su, fight bravely like a godlike young man." But his gaze did not waver. "Maybe I've never seen it before. I bet 5 moves. No, we have to play with them. I haven't met such brave little friends in a long time." Hua Rong squinted his eyes and a hint of mockery flashed across his eyes. "Such little friends can play with us for a while." This was a battle without any suspense. The top 50 experts of Humble Forest Planet in the entire Humble Forest Planet's food chain were all at the top. The so-called top fighters of Black Mountain City in front of such fighters were as weak as dolls. Ling Su might have a bright future ahead of him, but right now he could only do whatever he wanted in Black Mountain City. Hua Sha shook her head and said in a low voice, "I don't like to play. Look, they are rushing over. There's nothing to see. 10 moves, I bet they won't last 10 moves. Anyone want to bet with me?" "Teacher." "Not good." Tang Tian was like a flash of lightning, rushing towards Hua Sha. Tang Tian did not even turn his head, his gaze was fixed on Hua Xiong on his left, his heart blazing with fighting spirit. On any planet, to be able to enter the top 50 was definitely strong. Although Phylan Star was the lowest level planet under Onyx Soul, but the average standard of Phylan Star's martial artists was much stronger than the fallen immortal constellation. "No." Tang Tian stretched out a finger and shook it lightly. "There is a very fair battle in front of us. 1 for you, 1 for me. Whoever defeats the opponent first wins. How about it? Ling Su, do you dare?" "That's right, throw them out." When the figures appeared on the streets, Ling Su's eyes suddenly shrunk and his heart sank. The 2 figures rushing towards the Hua brothers were so small and insignificant, so weak. "Looking forward to sparring with Xia." Such words in these 10 years in the entire Phylan Star, no one dared to say it. Xia. Mu Lei's spirit was slightly lifted. He remembered that Tang Tian was the one who could escape from Xia. With a body the size of a small hill and the incomparably heavy wolf-fanged mace, Hua Sha's every step shook the earth and mountains when she ran. Hua Rong, who was sprinting, started to relax his wrists. The copper rod pressed down lightly, the calm expression on his face gradually disappeared, his murderous aura rose rapidly. The heavy brass rod in his hands was like a light cicada's wings, vibrating rapidly. Tang Tian's gaze locked onto the Hua brothers who were walking towards them leisurely. There was no fear in his heart, only a burning desire to fight. Such a pity. I have been looking forward to sparring with Xia again. If he could not even defeat Hua Sha, how could he challenge Xia? But there was no fear in his heart. The wind blew on his face, his short blue hair rippled like waves, his orange-red eyes leaping with flames. "Bullshit. Who's trembling?" Ling Su flew into a rage. "I'll be afraid? Just these 2 fellows want me to be afraid? I can beat the shit out of them with 1 hand." It was as if they could see Ling Su and Tang Tian in the next second like a loose scarecrow completely crushed by the Hua brothers. Among them, no one could maintain their composure in the face of such a wild attack. The one who answered Tang Tian's question was Mu Lei. This Iron Man's face was filled with despair, his voice was hoarse, very powerful. They are the only 2 brothers to fight their way into the top 50 of Phylan Star. A figure with a sharp edge stretched out, entered Hua Sha's vision without warning. Like a pair of scissors sweeping across the sky, it appeared below his left leg. "Save me." Ling Su's eyes were red. "You said I will lose? You still want to save me with your lousy skills? Come on, let's fight first, duel. Let me tell you, I've long found you an eyesore." The 2 brothers had different personalities. The difference was huge. Hua Rong was more shrewd and cunning. Hua Sha was much more dull. But not only was Hua Sha born with superhuman strength, he was even more talented in martial arts and fought like a wild beast. As the distance between the 2 shortened rapidly, the voices of discussion disappeared instead. "Still Xia?" Ling Su laughed coldly. "Think about how to fight today. These 2 bears are not ordinary bears. With that bit of strength of yours, you will probably be beaten to the shit out of you." The ground shook and interrupted Hua Rong's words. He turned his face in dissatisfaction. The movement just now was caused by Hua Sha casually placing the double-headed mace on the ground. Mu Lei stared blankly at Tang Tian. He was stunned by Tang Tian's arrogant words. "No. Hua brothers. Everything around him became a blur, only Huaxia's movements he could barely catch. Suddenly Tang Tian's pupils contracted, his eyes caught a movement of Huaxia's wrist. Huaxia carried the double-headed mace with one hand, took big strides and started running. Uncle Mu, watch out for other people's sneak attacks. Gu Shue's face was pale without a trace of blood, but she still sat upright and did not panic too much. Don't tell me they don't know the Hua brothers? Even while sprinting, Tang Tian's body was leaning forward by a large margin, he still held his head up. Huaxia, who was magnifying rapidly in his eyes, was indeed imposing. That crazy murderous intent was enough to tear everything into pieces. A strong sense of danger lingered in his mind, his instincts had already given him a warning. Even the onlookers, in the face of the Hua brothers' crazy aura and murderous intent, all turned pale with fright. He was actually a full half a second later than him. His tone suddenly became awe-inspiring. What's his name? Lingsu. I heard he's a prodigy with a lot of potential. There's nothing more exciting than destroying such a prodigy. Come on, Big Black Bear, witness the prowess of this godlike young man. So impatient. Hua Rong shook his head. He could not do anything to his own brother, but the next moment he too disappeared on the spot. This thought in Tang Tian's mind was so strong that he almost wanted to roar out loud. Tang Tian suddenly raised his head. He stood up and looked towards the end of the street. Half a second later, Ling Su also sensed the opponent's aura. He also felt a chill in his heart. Holding his silver spear, he stood up. He glanced at Tang Tian with some surprise. This guy's senses were really sharp. Rumble, rumble. As the two parties got closer, the crowd did not even dare to breathe loudly. Gu and Xiong's face also revealed a shocked expression. Ling Su's expression, as though he was facing a formidable enemy, made Tang Tian slightly shocked and hurriedly asked, "Is he very powerful? This guy is really arrogant." Anger can't solve the problem, young man. Tang Tian's eyes locked on the two people walking over, his expression cold, and spat out 4 words. I'll take the left, you take the right. My target is Xia. Gu Shui watched the internal conflict between the two dumbfounded. Are Ling Su and that kid crazy? They actually rushed over. Gu Wu stared blankly at the street below, his face full of disbelief. A brand new life, using a battle to declare the beginning, there's nothing better than this. Ling Su's gaze immediately turned to the distance. He was a little curious about the upcoming opponent. Based on his understanding of the Great Elder would definitely fight back heavily. All right. Hua Rong looked helpless. Up to you, but don't snatch mine. Oh my god. They actually didn't run. Tang Tian retorted sarcastically. Loser, go away. Hey, why are your legs shaking? If you're afraid, just hide behind Gu Shui. Yaya will protect you. Ling Su's heart was filled with a kind of new emotion, like a bright ray of sunshine shining through the hazy weather. He did not know why he was so touched. He quickly put this inappropriate emotion to the back of his mind, waiting for the next battle. Not only them, everyone who was watching this battle at this time could not believe their eyes at this time. His eyes were firmly locked on that domineering figure. The wind whistled in his ears, like a howling horn, urging him to move forward. The speed of both sides was very fast, like 2 meteorites colliding head-on. Before the voice died away, Ling Su rushed out with a whoosh. Chapter 144. Tang Tian took down Huaxia in one move, which made everyone's jaws drop. In the battle between Ling Su and Hua Rong, he actually did not fall into a disadvantageous position. The concentrated sounds of the spear and rod clashing, and the countless sparks in the air, did not stop. This guy's brute force was even stronger than a Maori, that freak. If the two of them could last more than 100 moves, it would be enough to make them famous. But this battle suddenly became interesting. Tang Tian used all his strength in this move, and was unable to stabilize his body, and flew out more than 10 feet, sticking close to the ground. The rod technique that he trained was Cicada Wing Rod, which was a rod technique that walked the path of lightness. But he was ingenious and instead used the extremely heavy brass rod. Although his strength was not as terrifying as Huaxia, but his arm strength was equally shocking. Speed and weight were ingeniously blended together, and it was amazing. The 1.6 tall Huaxia had shrunk a few sizes, and did not have the slightest sense of strength anymore, Even the ferocious look on his face had become gentle and refined. Tang Tian's newly invented technique of exerting strength was suddenly unleashed. This is... A hint of greed flashed past his eyes. An armor set in Phylan's star was definitely a rare item. Not to mention Phylan's star, even in Onyx Soul, an armor set's value was rather high, and this guy's armor was obviously not an ordinary item. Hua Rong's rod technique was actually forcefully blocked by this pointed sea spear. The resistance of the pointed sea spear was extremely strong. The spear and rod had clashed countless times, but not once Hua Rong felt that the brass rod in his hands had hit something solid. The tip of the spear was dotted with starlight, dots of silver cold light, lit up in the air. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8 in the blink of an eye. In front of him was a vast sea of stars. Oh my God! Oh my God, what am I seeing? In the chamber of the 18 bronze figures, whenever his sense of danger was so intense, it meant that he was going to be eliminated. Why was he there? The crowd had yet to recover from the shock. An extremely solid square tablet seal appeared above Tang Tian's head. The soundless blue quickly spread over Tang Tian's body. In the blink of an eye, the peacock armor had already covered him. At this time he didn't care whether others would find out that he was an honorable Martial Alliance member. Today's battle meant death if he lost. Although Hua Rong did not take Ling Su seriously, he was cunning and suspicious by nature, so he did not attack wildly like Hua Sha. The brass rod in his hand was as fast as lightning. If that's all you've got, you're dead meat. Everyone was dumbfounded. His arms were so numb that he could barely feel them. This fellow is dangerous. Bloodline. Tang Tian was unsure. His heart had an instinctive sense of danger, like dark clouds surging in from all directions. Everyone was in disbelief. Their faces were lifeless as they unconsciously exclaimed in surprise. The scene that had just happened had completely driven them into madness. Looking at Hua Sha struggling to get up from the ground covered in dust, it could be seen that his fall just now was a solid one. Hua Rong's face darkened. His brass rod was extremely fast, and the rod aura that he wielded was as thin and transparent as a cicada's wings. But today his ever-victorious rod skills met with stubborn resistance. Hua Sha's fierce gaze revealed a cruel smile. His mountainous body actually started to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. Cries of surprise like this suddenly exploded in the crowd of onlookers from afar. Today he finally met someone who could match him in the field that he was most proud of. This was not the first time Tang Tian felt such a strong sense of danger. Boom. If he couldn't even win this fellow, how could he challenge Xia? Hua Sha's eyes widened, his heart filled with shock. This was the first time he had encountered a martial artist who could compete with him in terms of strength. And the fellow in front of him, his physique was too deceiving. But this scene happened right in front of him. Tang Tian swung his arm, trying to get it to regain its senses as he stared at Hua Sha. That fellow was definitely not any better than him. But if he were to strike again, he would definitely be injured. The peacock had been nourished by Tang Tian's silver martial spirit for this period of time, and had regained some of its former glory. Tang Tian felt that his entire body was enveloped by a lively true power, and the originally sensitive touch extended far away. How was that possible? The intense pain instead made him more ferocious. Hua Sha roared, his left fist pounded hard on his chest, his right leg suddenly exerted strength, and he charged towards Tang Tian. Tang Tian's expression changed. The instinctive sense of danger was so strong that the true power in his body was churning uncontrollably. A bloodthirsty glow surfaced in his eyes, and his open mouth became more and more sinister. This attack Hua Sha did not hold back at all. Now that he was forcefully blocked, he did not feel good either. He retreated 7 to 8 steps before regaining his balance. The 600 Kadi mace in his hands swung up. A powerful treasure, its own strength and martial spirit, could be shared with the martial artist. Bam! If someone had told him before that there was someone faster than him on Phylan's star, and that this person was a nobody, he would never have believed it. The limestone slabs within a radius of 5 feet around Tang Tian turned into fine powder. How long could the two youths last? Tang Tian was dumbstruck. Such fast spear skills. Hua Sha's heart. Look. Suddenly someone screamed from the crowd. Although Tang Tian's strength surprised Hua Sha, but he grinned. Both his arms went numb. Tang Tian groaned, his eyes wide open in anger, the horse stance that looked like it was about to fall apart, but he stood firm. But a huge force came, his feet sank and the sole of his feet sank into the limestone slabs. Shock flashed across Huasha's pupils. Huasha only felt a huge force coming from his left leg, and his entire body was shoved up by the strong force. When Tang Tian finished turning around, Huasha had already crawled up from the ground. As long as they did not provoke a terrifying fellow like Xia, the two of them could do whatever they wanted. With the armor on, Tang Tian's courage grew, and with a roar facing Huasha's mace, Tang Tian lowered his waist into a horse stance, and used a great monument palm. The Hua brothers' glorious victory as expected did not happen, and the expected one-sided situation did not happen either. Tang Tian, who was sticking close to the ground, his feet in front, his body leaning backwards. His legs drew out two streaks of snow-white light, crisscrossing in the air like a pair of open scissors. Hua Rong was shocked and suspicious. In terms of strength, the godlike youth had never been afraid of anyone. In the blink of an eye, the Hua Sha in front of Tang Tian shrunk from 1.95 meters to 1.6 meters. Everyone's gaze instinctively turned to Ling Su and Hua Rong. Moreover, Tang Tian wanted to win. These two words suddenly appeared in a few people's minds, but immediately after they felt that this thought was too ridiculous, and immediately threw it to the back of their minds. The two little fellows only managed to hold off the Hua brothers' victory? That was still far from it. How is it possible? How could he defeat Hua Sha? But such two strong people were forcefully held off by two 17 to 18 years old nameless children. Hua Sha seemed oblivious. That pair of beast-like eyes stared fiercely at Tang Tian. He did not conceal his murderous intent and rage, he was actually injured. And there was the armor. This was the true strength of the honorable martial alliance. Hua Sha stared at Tang Tian in front of him. He was ugly and fierce to begin with, and now with a gloomy face he looked even more terrifying. Half of the trousers on his left calf was sliced off. A terrifying scissor-shaped wound extended along the calf bone to both sides. Fresh blood flowed out of the wound, snaking down the calf and soaked his left sole. Dong dong dong. Almost instantly Tang Tian made a judgment and growled, "Peacock. But, maybe victory? I'm not seeing things right. I must be seeing things." The great monument palm print above Tang Tian's head showed cracks and shattered with a ping. His great monument palm print was extremely hard and had never been broken before, but today it was forcefully shattered. Fast as lightning, this was one of the things he was most proud of. Compared to Hua Sha, his strength was far behind, but compared to speed, Hua Sha was also far behind. Even among the top 50 martial artists on Phylan's star, there were many who were stronger than him, but those who were faster than him could be counted on one's fingers. The exclamations gradually quietened down. People suddenly realized they needed to start re-examining this battle that they originally thought had no suspense. The terrifying low howl made everyone's heart go numb. A deep earthy yellow light enveloped the mace in an instant, including Tang Tian. A whole radius of 50 feet was within the range of Hua Sha's attack. Such a collision of pure strength, there were almost no tricks to speak of. Ling Su, where did this fellow come from? Suddenly, a sound similar to a strong heartbeat entered Tang Tian's ears. Tang Tian could not help but be stunned. What was this? As he followed the sound to find the source of the sound, his expression changed slightly. The spectators became excited. 20 moves. 50 moves. Woo-woo. The sound of a heavy object falling to the ground came from behind. It was a pity that this was a good opportunity for an additional attack. Tang Tian quickly regained his composure. It was already not easy for him to make Hua Sha suffer a loss in the first encounter. Tang Tian was very clear, the battle had just begun. Tang Tian suppressed the shock in his heart. His body shook slightly. The dust on his body bounced into the air, forming a human shape, and dissipated. Only then did he slowly stand up straight, exhaled a long breath, but his eyes were cold. These were the Hua brothers. They were able to fight their way into the top 50 of Phylan's star, the top elites on this planet. They could do whatever they wanted on this planet, in this tiny black mountain city. They could only tremble under their feet. Originally he thought that this mission was just a formality. Hua Rong and the rest had long qualified to leave Phylan's star. With his and Hua Sha's strength, it was definitely not a problem to get a seat on the Onyx Soul car outside. But once they left Phylan's star, although they could earn more, the risk was also higher. It was nowhere as comfortable as Phylan's star. Chapter 145. Wuxia's strength and speed had reached a shocking level, but his martial techniques were not as strong as his speed and strength. If before the blue peacock shattered Tang Tian had not thought of a way, then he would be in real danger. But this was not enough. Wuxia's strength was twice as strong as before, and what was more dangerous was, this fellow's speed had also become rather shocking. The intuition that he had always been proud of was actually useless in that attack just now. It was not that he did not give up on the battle, but he did not give up on victory. Tang Tian's physical body was definitely unable to withstand such a terrifying attack. From the appalling peacock armor, Bing knew that the blue peacock was at its limit. Too strong. Almost at the same time that Tang Tian flew out, Wuxia's figure disappeared again. In his panic he had no time to react and could only cross his arms in front of his chest. The attacks on his back did not slow down, but the eyes that were curled up in his arms suddenly opened. He thought of a way. Wuxia smiled slightly. Good eyesight. Dwarf blood meridians. He silently counted the attacks on his back and adjusted his breathing. When the 28th mace touched his back, he suddenly stretched his body. The current power system was beyond recognition. There were too many contents that he was unfamiliar with, but how to dig out potential was the field that he was most proficient in. The strength of the dwarf blood meridians surprised him. Tang Tian's vision blurred again, and it was exactly the same as before. Almost in an instant, Tang Tian did not have time to make a blocking posture. The terrifying power crashed hard into his arm, and his entire body flew out like a sandbag. Finally unable to withstand it, Wuxia seemed to see the Tang Tian who had lost his protection, and was blasted into a pile of minced meat. The bloodthirsty light in his eyes intensified. His mouth full of teeth were all covered in blood. Bang bang bang. His heart was still filled with the desire for victory, even in such a hopeless situation. The mace smashed heavily on his back. His vision almost turned black and he felt that his back was almost broken. However, he knew that this was his only chance. Enduring the sharp pain, his body was as soft as noodles. Borrowing the momentum, he rolled back towards the mace and at the same time hooked his leg backwards. Tang Tian was the youth with the most potential he had ever seen, but Tang Tian clearly did not realize how great his potential was. In Bing's eyes, a trace of anxiety and worry flashed past. Tang Tian felt like he had been hit head-on by a wild beast. His vision darkened and he was sent flying. Tang Tian struggled to hold on. Every time the staff struck him, he felt like his body was about to fall apart. However, he knew that if he gave up, he wouldn't stand a chance at all. Bing was an instructor. He had seen many of these so-called geniuses, but in the end they squandered their time and talent and became mediocre. But no one noticed. Unknowingly, Tang Tian had been hit more than 20 times. The faint blue peacock armor was now in tatters. The power of every blow was terrifying, and the feather armor was shattered and scattered. The battle entered a one-sided rhythm. Tang Tian was like a ball that was constantly being hit. Wuxia was so calm and unruffled. The terrifyingly heavy mace in his hands was as light as a feather, and he waved it around like he was swatting a fly. Although Tang Tian tried to dodge at the last moment, but he still could not avoid it. He was like a puppet that was lifted up and flew into the sky. Although he had the protection of the armor, Tang Tian was still unable to escape. He felt a sweetness in his throat and was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. Ever since Wuxia activated the dwarf blood meridians, Tang Tian did not even have a chance to retaliate. Wuxia's attacks were like a storm so dense that it was terrifying. He did not even give him a chance to breathe or think. A continuous 20 blows, and with every blow Tang Tian had to endure immense pain. He curled his body and endured it forcefully. After suffering 20 blows, Tang Tian did not suffer for nothing. He discovered Wuxia's weakness, martial techniques. Suddenly his vision blurred. His hand tightened and a hand grabbed his right hand. Moreover, this fellow did not lack battle intelligence. Although he looked unreliable normally, but Tang Tian who entered battle mode had quick reflexes. That blow just now, he was injured. But Tang Tian knew that the situation was dire. Wuxia's attacks would definitely follow and would not stop here. Tang Tian's pupils widened. Tang Tian's eyes locked onto Wuxia, but he felt increasingly uneasy. Tang Tian was facing a formidable enemy, and did not dare to slack off. Suddenly his vision blurred and Wuxia disappeared. Dwarf blood meridians. What a weird name. Hooked. With Bing's eyesight, he found a few places that Tang Tian could use and improve, but he did not intend to remind Tang Tian. Bing watched the battlefield quietly. He took in Tang Tian's sorry figure, and Hua Sha's dwarf blood meridians surprised him. In their era, the exploration of power was far from what it was today. The current power system had too many new areas that he was not familiar with. The frail figure and the faint smile on Hua Sha's face were filled with an awe-inspiring power. Be careful, that's the dwarf blood meridians. Mu Lei's exclamation came from behind, his voice was trembling with a strong sense of panic. Tang Tian, who was just sent flying, swallowed the fresh blood that rushed to his throat. His body curled into a ball and he roared, "Peacock!" His martial techniques were not strong, how could he make use of this weakness? Such a strong person, they could not even think of resisting. So strong. The shrunken version of Hua Sha was like a different person. The hideous face also became delicate and refined, the bulging muscles disappeared, and in its place was a well-proportioned and even somewhat frail figure. No matter what, Tang Tian could not connect the refined Hua Sha in front of him with the barbaric Hua Sha just now. Tang Tian stared at Hua Sha, his face dark, his mind working quickly. But he did not make a move, even though Tang Tian looked so pathetic, like he could die at any time. He was still waiting for Tang Tian's counterattack. Tang Tian casually wiped the bloodstain from the side of his mouth, his gaze locked onto Hua Sha, his mind desperately trying to think of a way. The somewhat frail hand picked up the mace lightly. The double-headed mace that was more than 1.8 meters was taller than Hua Sha in front of him, but the 600 catty double-headed mace was as light as a straw in Hua Sha's hands. This strange and unfamiliar name made Tang Tian for the first time feel the power of the blood meridians directly. How is it? Is this power stronger than just now? But Hua Sha did not intend to let Tang Tian think slowly. Tang Tian's back was in severe pain, his entire body was like a falling meteorite, smashing into the limestone slabs with a whistling sound. No one would have thought that even in such a desperate situation, Tang Tian still did not give up. If it was said that pure power was not enough to make people fearful, then the perfect combination of power and speed made Hua Sha's danger level rise exponentially. How to fight? At a speed so fast that they could not catch, Hua Sha would always appear in the air beside Tang Tian like a ghost. Tang Tian, who made everyone's eyes light up just now, did not even have a single counterattack. His exertion was not sufficient, he should be practicing the hammer skills, but the use of true power was not very good. Tang Tian's face appeared out of nowhere, suddenly appeared in front of him, grinning at him. In the next moment he appeared beside Tang Tian, the double-headed mace in his hands, struck fiercely on Tang Tian's waist. The process of potential turning into ability was always accompanied by pain, failure, and struggle. Without these, potential would forever be potential. In midair, the thin and weak Hua Sha made a nimble turn and landed on the ground, a faint smile on his face. The double-headed mace in his hands was still swinging like a windmill. Compared to his shocking power and speed, his martial techniques were indeed much weaker. If Hua Sha's martial techniques were equally strong, then this battle Tang Tian would definitely have no chance of winning. Because this was a confident, unyielding, and ambitious fellow who hated failure. Even if he fell into a predicament, he would never sink, never stop resisting, never stop struggling. Without thinking, the leg hooked onto the mace suddenly exerted force, and like a snake he swung behind him. Tang Tian's current ability was not strong enough, but it was already starting to shine. The peacock feathers behind him spread out like a peacock spreading its tail. So fast. Poof. That was an astonishingly huge treasure trove. Hua Sha saw Tang Tian curled up into a ball, and was finally blasted away by him and was instantly overjoyed. Tang Tian curled up into a ball, his vital parts were tightly protected, and there was almost no place for him to strike. Bang! Tang Tian was completely in a passive situation. Hua Sha's speed was too fast for him to catch. The powerful attacks made him even more miserable. He could only curl up into a ball like a hedgehog and forcefully endure the attacks. 25-26. Swoosh. The spectators were all pale. They finally understood what was Phylan Star's top 50. Tang Tian was thinking hard. There must be a chance. There must be a flaw. There must be hope. Young man, if you can find a way you can win, you can definitely go further. Bing tried his best to calm himself down. He believed that Tang Tian would definitely not give up. But Huasha did not have the slightest bit of carelessness. The attacks came wave after wave without any pause. The mace brought along a strong sound of wind and smashed onto the surface. A blurry figure suddenly appeared in Tang Tian's vision. Huasha's voice traveled into Tang Tian's ears. Tang Tian, who was lying on the ground, struggled to get up. He stared fiercely at Huasha, a trickle of blood trickling down from the corner of his mouth. The cold feeling from his feet made Tang Tian ecstatic. The scene in front of him was so strange, so uncoordinated, but no one could laugh, including Tang Tian. Especially when Huasha's frail wrist flipped lightly, the heavy mace spun in his hands like a windmill. Bing chanted silently in his heart, his deep gaze shone with anticipation. But like other geniuses, all the potential had to be continuously excavated, squeezed before it could possibly become an ability. Otherwise, they could only forever stay in that unknown deep mountain quietly sleeping. Chapter 146. Boom. The star sea vanished in an instant, while the tip of Ling Su's spear was enveloped in a dazzling silver glow. Huasha's heart was thumping wildly. The whitebird vortex had disrupted his vision, while Tan Tue blade had attracted his attention. Huasha was shocked and suddenly exerted strength. The hand that was freed faced these white vortexes and pierced straight into the ground. Poof. Different from Tang Tian's wretched state, Ling Su's strength was out of everyone's expectations. Tang Tian sat on the ground, panting desperately. He could not believe it. He won. When the spear passed through the star sea, the entire star sea drew out countless rays of silver flowing light and sank into Ling Su's spear tip. Thump. Huasha had thought of all kinds of Tang Tian's reactions, such as escaping, but he had never thought that Tang Tian would actually take the initiative to close the distance between them. Huasha quickly understood Tang Tian's intention, to entangle his hand, and then his advantage in speed could not be used. The whitebird vortex that was rushing over with a strong rotation, there were many of them. Huasha's body was like a turbulent sea wave. He could not stabilize his body at all. Tang Tian's entire body instantly lit up with a dazzling blue light. The light was so dazzling that one could not look straight at it. Countless rays of blue light shot out from Tang Tian's body, like a rainstorm, engulfing Huasha, who was just inches away. Compared to the stalemate on Ling Su's side, the situation on Tang Tian's side was obviously more eye-catching. Huasha's heart trembled. One must know that his true power was much more vigorous than Tang Tian. By right he should be able to block it easily. But within Tang Tian's true power, there was an extremely sharp force. It actually broke through Huasha's true power that was wrapped around his palm. This was... Wait a minute. Where's he? His eyes suddenly flashed a trace of ruthlessness. With a roar, he gathered all the strength in his body and pulled Tang Tian into his bosom with his right hand. At the same time, he drew in his abdomen and arched his back. With his left hand protecting his vitals, he used his body to ram into Tang Tian. From beginning to end, Ling Su's attacks gave off a lukewarm feeling. No matter how his opponent attacked, he just kept unleashing sea after sea of stars. It looked like an ordinary stab, and when it was thrust out, there was not the slightest whistling sound, but the surrounding specks of starlight were attracted to the spear tip. Warsaw was very experienced in battle. He immediately realized that his situation was very dangerous. His opponent was very good at close combat, and he could always predict in advance. It would be terrible if they were to remain in such a passive position. He felt a sharp pain in his left palm, as if he had been cut twice by a knife. The corner of Huasha's eyes twitched. This grab missed. Sand. Huarong saw Huasha falling face up and cried out in grief. His eyes turned red and he roared, "I'm going to kill you." The head of the first branch gazed at the scene. He almost could not believe his own eyes. Ling Su was actually able to contend against Huarong. Suddenly, his heart was filled with regret. The one they let go was actually a super strong fighter who could fight his way into the top 50 of Phylan's star. Tang Tian's breathing was heavy, his mind was blank. He did not even have the strength to move a finger. Seeing that his hand was about to touch Tang Tian's shoulder, suddenly from the corner of his eyes, there seemed to be something below him. Before he could react, a puff of white air mass rushed up from below. Finning. Huasha was taken aback. These white balls of air were extremely fast, like a flock of white birds, suddenly rushing towards his face. His eyes were completely blocked. Like a wooden stake, Huasha fell on her back. Huasha's strength was too great. With a full pull, Tang Tian could not even stabilize his body. Seeing that both parties were about to collide, a glint flashed past Tang Tian's eyes. Huasha did not expect that he would actually be at a disadvantage. Tang Tian's attack came and went like a ghost. There was no trace to follow. And it was fast. Not just pure speed, but the rhythm was fast. There was no time to think about it now. The final juncture. The third type. But, close combat. You are too naive. The scene was spectacular. Ling Su's face was as determined as a rock. His orange-red eyes seemed to have something breaking out of the cocoon of flames. He shouted solemnly, "Righteous origin heart." These two words had just surfaced in his mind. Suddenly, two rays of cold light went straight for Huasha's chin, Tantue blade. Huasha's expression changed slightly. The raging true power, like a tide, drilled into his body. Luckily, Huasha had already sensed the peculiarity of Tang Tian's true power from the Tantue blade earlier, and was unusually vigilant this time. So when Tang Tian's palm imprinted on his waist, he was already prepared to block the crane body energy. Time seemed to have stopped. When the light dissipated, two entangled figures like statues appeared in front of everyone. A palm was imprinted on his right waist. Heavenly dragon energy. Those martial artists who had lost to Ling Su now realized they did not lose unjustly. Ling Su's spear skills were displayed to the fullest. Today, everyone witnessed Ling Su's true strength with their own eyes. A spear pierced out. Damn it. Huasha's expression changed slightly. He suffered a huge loss in the first exchange. It left a deep impression on him. His empty left hand was prepared to slap towards them, when suddenly a huge force came from his right hand. Huasha's body swayed. Both parties strangely fell into a stalemate again. Tang Tian could feel Blue Peacock's emotions: excitement, pain, anticipation. Half a step away from him, Huasha stood frozen on the spot, his eyes wide open. His entire body was pierced with faint blue feathers like a hedgehog. There were also countless bloody holes with fresh blood flowing out. Faced with Tang Tian's sudden attack, Huasha was caught off guard. Ling Su took a step forward, raised his spear and pierced straight towards Huarong. The aura of this spear from nothing to something instantly rose to the extreme. This was superb spear skills. Huasha was shocked. He hurriedly exerted force with his right hand, stabilizing his body, hoping to pull his body away. However, what he did not expect was his true power first trembled like the strings of a zither being plucked. The true power in Huasha's body trembled. Not good. Huasha's expression changed instantly. He did not expect Tang Tian actually had a second type of energy. Damn it. Ling Su was actually this strong? Huasha laughed coldly in his heart. Without hesitation he let go of the double-headed mace, flipped his wrist and similarly grabbed onto Tang Tian's arm. The other hand grabbed towards Tang Tian. At such a close distance the advantage of great strength could be fully displayed. After activating the dwarf, his strength doubled. As long as he could grab hold of any part of Tang Tian's body, he could tear Tang Tian apart with his bare hands. He could feel his opponent being pulled by him. His body swung away. And at this moment, Tantue's blade aura also arrived like lightning. Huasha's left palm was enveloped with true power, and blocked these two Tantue blades. In the endless sea of stars, every star was a cold aura pointed out by Ling Su's spear tip. Phylan's star's position in the top 50 did not fall from the sky, but was earned by his own blade and spear. He was very clear of his own weaknesses, and was equally adept at displaying his strengths. Not good. Turbulent true power and powerful strength suddenly exploded. Peacock. Tang Tian's roar was like a sudden clap of thunder. His face was still filled with disbelief. Huasha felt as though there was a bomb at the right side of his waist. It exploded. But at this moment his eyes suddenly flashed a piercingly cold ray of light. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The spear tip sprinkled out spots of cold aura in the air. The cold aura was like the sea of stars, layer upon layer. Huarong's brass rod was forcibly blocked by the sea of stars. No matter how Huarong's moves changed, Ling Su turned a blind eye to it. He just continuously brandished out sea of stars one after another. Huarong was once again entangled by the sea of stars. He was actually in a stalemate with Huarong. Huasha had enough confidence, he had already tested it earlier. Tang Tian's strength was not his match at all. Dong. Without waiting for him to recover, that burst of true power exploded without any warning. The silver martial spirit that was burning to the extreme spewed out streaks of beautiful silver flames. These silver flames all entered the blue peacock martial spirit. The blue peacock martial spirit was rapidly changing. Even at the risk of being injured, he wanted to disrupt Tang Tian's rhythm. His sprinkling speed became even faster. He did not spend any energy to contend with Huasha, but in an instant he channeled all his true power into the blue peacock. Shirtori whirlpool. The silver light cut across the horizon, dazzling. Everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. Those who did not close their eyes in time saw a vast expanse of whiteness. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Ling Su's true power was not as good as Hua Rong's, and he had not activated his blood meridians, but he was not at a disadvantage, all because of his spear techniques. It was the first time Hua Rong encountered such spear techniques, and he actually had no way to deal with it. There was almost no connection between the moves. It was like moving clouds and flowing water, one move after another tiring him out. Tang Tian, who had recovered a bit of strength, struggled to pull his arm out from Huasha's hand. His entire arm was bruised. This guy's strength was too terrifying. That's right, without speed then use strength, absolute strength. What followed was definitely close combat. In the stalemate, Hua Rong activated his blood meridians. His blood meridians were different from Huasha, called the winged human blood meridians. His originally rather astonishing speed suddenly increased dramatically. The rod shadow could not be seen clearly, only a curtain of light could be seen. The light dissipated and the field of vision gradually returned to normal. Just when everyone thought Ling Su would be like Tang Tian, beaten back to his original form, Ling Su actually unknowingly turned back. After getting close, Tang Tian suddenly realized, against Huasha's astonishing speed earlier, his instincts that were almost useless suddenly became sensitive again. As one weakened and the other strengthened, the rhythm of the battle fell back into Tang Tian's hands. A few dazzling rays of the blade crisscrossed in the air, and suddenly lit up in Huasha's field of vision. Huasha's body swayed uncontrollably. The palm that was initially about to grab Tang Tian was also knocked away. On Ling Su's face an indomitable determination surfaced. The current him was like a different person, holding the silver spear. The rays were boundless, like a deity descending to earth. Hua Rong's chest had a basin-sized wound. It was completely penetrated. The shape was horrifying. Everyone stared blankly at Tang Tian, dead silent. Chapter 147. Yaya's eyes were like the stars in the night sky, twinkling, slipping away, disappearing without a trace. In the next second, it appeared beside Huasha's corpse, its little hands grabbing onto Huasha's corpse, spreading its legs and dragging Huasha with all its might, sprinting towards Hua Rong. Black and dense like the tide. Voices filled with panic in the silence were unusually piercing. Yaya, go drag those two dead men back too. Tang Tian said quietly. He's fine. Just exhausted. Mulei's voice came from where Ling Su was. Don't touch him. Damn it. Ling Su was like a wooden stake falling with a loud bang, raising a cloud of dust. Mrs. eyes were full of determination as if something was flashing. With Gu and Xiong and Great Elder joining hands, countless practitioners began to appear at the end of the street. Suddenly Mulei stood up and stared furiously at the street in the distance. Countless stars were spinning in front of Tang Tian, this bastard. Gu and Xiong's eyes were filled with madness. He gritted his teeth and said, Gather all the men, let's take this chance and get rid of them. Gu Wu was shocked by Gu and Xiong's words. You're crazy. They can even get rid of the Hua brothers. Gu and Xiong's face was ashen, his limbs icy cold. He did not wish for Great Elder to get Gu Shui, but the outcome before his eyes was even harder for him to accept. If Great Elder got Gu Shui, it was only to strengthen his branch in the future, but the conflict between him and Gu Shui was impossible to reconcile. Teacher, I did it. A name that floated in the legends. Yeah, you should learn to speak. Tang Tian said weakly. Ouch ouch ouch. She did not lose her composure and suddenly said loudly, Uncle Mu, bring them away. Gu Shui stabilized her emotions. This period of suffering made her grow up rapidly. She began to understand that grief and despair would not be of any help to her situation. She took out a bottle of ointment that she had never seen before and began to apply it on Tang Tian. Her movements were clumsy. "Shut up!" Gu and Xiong roared angrily. He was like a cornered beast. "When they recover, we're dead. Will Gu Shui let you off? How could this godlike young man die here? You have a big dream, you want to go and find your Qian Hui. Yaya? Bastard. Are you okay?" Clang 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 clang. Gu Wu was dumbstruck and said with a trembling voice, He won. Whether it was worship, reverence, or fear, no one could deny their strength. Everyone present thought without hesitation that this was a battle with a great disparity in strength. Tang Tian and Ling Su had no chance of winning, not even in theory. The only thing that everyone was interested in was how long they could last, and how stunning the Hua brothers' performance would be. Tang Tian felt a cool breeze on his back and it was very comfortable. After the big battle, his tensed nerves relaxed. Fatigue and tiredness surged in like a tide. Tang Tian actually fell asleep. Tang Tian stuck his face to the ground, which was full of mud, and laughed foolishly. He did not know how to describe his feelings and did not know how to celebrate this hard-earned victory. He had no strength left. Mu Lei had heard this voice before. It was Tang Tian's spirit general. Mu Lei clenched his teeth and pounced towards Tang Tian. "Go. Gather everyone." Gu and Xiong's killing intent was revealed. They have killed the Hua brothers and are already a spent force. This is their weakest moment. Dewey, you hold Mu Lei back. If we don't kill them today, all of us will have to die. I will go look for Great Clan Elder now. If he doesn't want to die, he has to join hands with us. In the dead silence, only Ling Su's whispers could be heard, drifting in the wind. Yaya's small physique, but his strength was much greater than Tang Tian imagined. After dragging a few steps, Yaya started to jog. Yaya was like a boat hauler shouting a rhythmic tune, jogging all the way, quickly dragging Tang Tian towards the ruins. Passing by a piece of rock, Yaya nimbly jumped over it. Poor Tang Tian, his head bounced off the rock. Tang Tian, who was sprawled on the ground, was rather open-minded. Mu Lei immediately reacted, but Mu Lei saw the endless stream of martial artists at the end of the street and his face changed. Almost instantly he understood Great Clan Elder and Gu and Xiong's intention. They wanted to make a comeback while Tang Tian and Ling Su were weak. But no one spoke. Everyone hugged their heads and looked at the messy street in disbelief. They won. These two brats won. Someone hugged his head with both hands and stared blankly at the scene. His face was pale as though he was shocked. They really won. Seeing the martial artists closing in, their faces were filled with madness and ruthlessness. "Missy, these people are crazy. If they did not succeed, they will vent their anger on you in desperation." Rushing to Hua Rong's side, his other hand grabbed Hua Rong and then he ran back. "Or do I hope you can live?" He saw a few familiar faces. Those were the experts under Gu and Xiong and Great Clan Elder. They were crazily flying along the street, and all of their faces were extremely sinister. The two parties that had joined hands had used all the chips in their hands. Soft murmurs were like a breeze, blowing past Gu Shui's heart. Dust billowed. Yaya dragged two huge fellows that were completely disproportionate to his body. His cheeks were puffed up and his eyes were wide open as though he was using all his strength. His tiny body actually made Tang Tian feel an unstoppable and powerful aura, causing Tang Tian to stare in bewilderment. Tang Tian was in so much pain that his entire face turned pale. Yaya pulled his hair and dragged Tang Tian towards Gu Shui's direction step by step. Yaya dragged Hua Sha and Hua Rong to the ruins at an alarming speed. His tiny body fell onto the ground with his belly facing the sky and panted desperately. On his back there was not a single piece that was unscathed and it was all bruised. There were thumb-sized bloody holes everywhere and some had already formed scabs. That was caused by the spikes on the mace. He walked to the line that Ling Su drew. Before many people could react, Yaya dragged Tang Tian back. Tang Tian was relieved and sprawled on the ground, too lazy to move. "Idiot! Collar! Pull the collar!" Gu Shui's concerned voice came from above. Gu Shui knelt on one knee and bent over to check on Tang Tian's body. "Yaya! Yaya! Yaya! Yaya!" Mu Lei's vision darkened and a shadow enveloped him. His body suddenly froze and he turned back in shock. Mu Lei rushed to Tang Tian's side like the wind. The moment his hand touched Tang Tian's body, a voice rang beside his ear without warning. A tall figure appeared behind him and blocked the light above his head. A familiar voice rang beside his ear and Tang Tian opened his eyes. "I'm fine." Tang Tian forced a smile. He felt Gu Shue's hand helping him to remove his tattered clothes. "You bastard, let go. Uncle Mu." Gu Shui used all her strength and roared at Mu Lei. Yaya, who was standing in front of Tang Tian's face, had a puzzled look and tilted her head. Gu Wu and De Wei's faces turned pale. A tall and unadorned bronze figure blocked the sunlight, the deep and cold bronze luster, with the sternness and smoke of the ancient battlefield, passed through countless years and set foot on this land. Gu Shui saw Tang Tian's back and her face turned pale. She covered her mouth and her eyes became misty. Tang Tian used his back to block Hua Sha's 20 strikes, and although he had the protection of the peacock armor, he still could not avoid being injured. The two of them seemed to wake up from a dream and hurried down. "They have spirit nuclei on them." Tang Tian's face said, "You know." The saber-toothed tiger's heavy metal feet turned and stepped on the ground, like an ancient war drum, slowly beating. Very quickly, Great Elder's men also started to mobilize. He was also clear. This time they had completely offended Gu Shui and Ling Su. If they did not take the opportunity to finish them off, they would definitely die. In Black Mountain City, no one could go against Tang Tian and Ling Su. The Hua brothers actually were killed by two nameless pawns. Yaya's speed was extremely fast and was actually not much slower than Mu Lei. That moment of dazzling blue and silver still lingered on their irises. That moment of brilliance was like a light sword piercing into their soft hearts, leaving a deep mark. But the result of this battle made everyone dumbfounded, and it was dead silent. No, absolutely not. He had put in so much effort, spent a whole 20 years to sit in this position. How could he die so easily? Tang Tian, thank you. Yaya. Unknowingly, Yaya rushed in front of his face. It waved its little arms, making squeaking sounds, its little face excited. But that was the Hua brothers. Gu Shui heaved a sigh of relief. She was most worried that Uncle Mu would hesitate at this time. Her gaze stopped at Tang Tian, who was lying on the ground. For some reason, her heart felt warm. There was no fear, only relief. It was not that she did not know. These people were already crazy. If she fell into their hands, she would be very miserable. But a peaceful smile quietly climbed up her beautiful face. Gu Shui's face turned white. She could see the enemy's determination. This was their last attack. "Quickly go." Gu and Xiong suddenly shouted angrily at the two of them. Gu Wu's face turned white. "Ah, very scary, right? Actually, it's okay. It's just a small problem. These injuries only look scary. I'll be fine after a few days of rest. I told you to pull my collar." This was their only chance, the only chance to survive. Gu Shui had the help of two people, then he and his branch would only have one ending. Death. "But it's a pity, you won't be able to see me activate my blood meridians." Tang Tian was shocked, and wanted to rush towards Ling Su, but his legs gave way and his entire body fell to the ground. His entire body was empty, without any strength. His face hit the ground, a wave of pain. Yaya suddenly grabbed Tang Tian's hair, its little cheeks puffed up, that pair of little eyes opened wide. Tang Tian's body was actually pulled by it, but Chapter 148. Ever since then he had never been on the front lines again. Bing, who was smiling, suddenly had a cold expression and rushed out. The distance between the two sides was constantly shrinking. De Wei's speed was extremely fast. He and a few other experts of similar strength rushed at the front. They were like the arrowhead of the team. The wind whistled in their ears. All of them used their light body techniques to the maximum, skimming over the walls, stepping on the roof, advancing together. Pupiu. As long as one of them woke up, they would be dead. But everyone could not help but admire the two of them. To be so decisive and crazy, it was already worthy of respect. Although it was his first time seeing the real thing, but he could still recognize that the 2-meter bronze tiger head armor in front of him was the legendary mechanical weapon. A crazy decision. So strong. Even the soldiers of the Southern Cross Army era would definitely not be able to do such a terrifying thing. The bronze figure was so fast that the naked eye could not catch it. In the blink of an eye, 3 experts had died. The others did not even see how their comrades died. They did not even see clearly. As long as they rushed over. then they would win. But the feeling of the battlefield. He had never forgotten. Leader, if it is not up to standard, don't scold me. Another 2 blood flowers blossomed from the 2 of them. Even though he was far away, but he was still in awe. Regardless of the body structure or the shape, including the minute patterns, they were all extremely realistic. He had seen countless imitations, but none of them could reach the standard in front of him. Suddenly, the mechanical martial artist on the ground raised his head. This fellow. Who exactly was he? It was so similar. The saber-toothed tiger landed on the ground, and the 3 corpses fell from the sky like sandbags, causing dust to rise and fresh blood to cover the ground. One person, no matter how powerful, could not block so many people. Hongguang, I'll leave the mechanical martial artist to you. The rest of you cover. De Wei said angrily, although the opponent's strength was definitely not high, but at this moment time was more important than anything else. Quickly settling it was the most important. So what if you became famous after one battle? So what if you killed the Hua brothers? You all have no chance. Countless of roaring figures were like a flood, rushing past him towards the ice-cold saber-toothed tiger. Far exceeding the number of people, the deafening roars caused De Wei's pale face to regain some color. De Wei's limbs were ice-cold, his entire body was trembling, his face was full of fear. He could not muster up any courage to resist. The next one would be him. Suddenly, a bronze figure appeared in his field of vision. Let me awaken the deep awe of that name in the world. Yes. What a good imitation. His pupils constricted, mechanical weapons. No matter how powerful the other party was, he was only one person. The dignified and solemn tiger head, the barbed joints, the sharp curved tiger claws. Southern Cross Army advance. A ray of light seemed to flash past the bronze tiger's eyes. De Wei's heart unknowingly tightened and subconsciously blurted out, "Be careful." Puff. "Commander, I will fight well and not lose the face of our army." In the blink of an eye, he was the only one left out of the few who had pounced on him. Those bastards always told him to stay at the back with peace of mind and leave the front line matters to them or something. At first he was a little worried that these bastards were unreliable. But later on he discovered that they were doing quite well, so he was relieved and focused on nurturing new recruits. Bing looked at the figures pouncing over. His heart did not have any fear, but was slightly absent-minded. Rumble. "Try my ass, it's like this, if you die we will burn incense for you." Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them, and also by Guan Xiong and the great clan elders' decision. Tang Tian and Ling Su had just killed the Hua brothers, which meant that with this battle, the 2 of them had entered the top 50 of Phylan's star. Under such circumstances, the 2 houses actually made a move. Were they not afraid that Tang Tian and Ling Su would wake up? This scene was no longer just terrifying but truly cruel. Suddenly De Wei was stunned. In his eyes, the saber-toothed tiger did not escape, did not dodge, but faced the crowd and squatted down, its bronze arms spread out like wings. But De Wei was not the least bit panicked. The standard of a mechanical engineer determined the standard of a mechanical weapon, and the standard of a mechanical weapon determined the standard of a mechanical martial artist. The standard of a mechanical engineer now was not high, and the mechanical martial artist was an even less popular profession, so the standard could be imagined. No choice, we're almost done for. Don't worry, your place will not be the main point of attack. You just have to hold on for 20 minutes and I will rush over. How about that? If not, I will find someone else. A mechanical martial artist? The corner of Bing's mouth involuntarily curved into a warm smile. Ah, that's impossible, absolutely impossible. A ridiculous thought suddenly popped up in his mind. Unless he wanted to block everyone by himself? De Wei felt that his own thoughts were too laughable. Seemed like he was scared out of his wits by this brat's attack just now. De Wei was slightly surprised. Could it be that among these people, there was actually a hidden mechanical martial artist? De Wei was most proficient in assassinations. To martial artists like him, all sorts of mechanisms were their natural enemies, and their research in this field was second only to the mechanical engineers. The mechanical weapon in front of him, he could recognize it with one look. It was the classic style of the Southern Cross Army. The surging martial artists rushed towards Gu Shui and the rest with all their might. The ground rumbled, the entire Black Mountain city was shaking. Although you can't see, although the army flag is no longer flying, although there are no more lines of defense, although the glory that we created together has been annihilated in history. Charge. They have no more strength left. I haven't used this move for a long time. I wonder if I'm rusty. A fresh blood flower suddenly blossomed from Hong Guang's chest without any warning. He believed this wave of anger could tear everything apart. The line of defense that was full of holes, the majestic figure that was covered in smoke, and his own broken mechanical weapon. De Wei's face turned white. The three people that died were the elites of the two families. Under their encirclement, the opponent easily killed the three of them in one move. At that time, De Wei's face did not have a single trace of blood. That was, even the name of the Southern Cross Army was slowly forgotten. Such a pity. The crazy and ruthless roar spread throughout the entire street. When the black mass of martial artists surged out from the end of the street, everyone who was watching the battle was overwhelmed with shock. Almost in a moment, it appeared behind Hong Guang. Unfortunately, Bing did not give them time to think. Almost in a moment, the figure of the saber-toothed tiger disappeared again. Kill, kill, kill. Captain, incense is very expensive. The group is very poor now. Who would have thought after so many years he would actually step into the battlefield again? Oh, all right. Actually, it was just a small-scale fight. But at least it was considered a battle. The corner of Bing's mouth curled up slightly. He lowered his waist, squatted slightly, his body leaned forward, both his hands spread out like wings. Those enemies that were quickly approaching in his vision were like air in his eyes. It was an extremely simple method of attack without any fanciful moves, but it had extraordinary lethality. De Wei saw with his own eyes a martial artist, obviously blocked the fist of the saber-toothed tiger, but the bronze-colored fist, as easily as breaking a dead branch, broke the martial artist's arm and pierced through his body. But at this time he did not hesitate and shouted loudly, "Everyone attack! Since only I am still alive." The saber-toothed tiger suddenly disappeared. Good. A boorish man boomed. He held a long-handled pumpkin hammer in his hand. Mechanical martial artists were most afraid of an enemy that could defeat 10 with one strength, because the mechanical weapon was usually not sturdy. Since when did such a strong mechanical martial artist appear? The mechanical martial artist was indifferent. He did not move an inch, causing De Wei to suspect. Was this a display item? How long had it been since he entered the battlefield? What was he trying to do? A few martial artists, shua, shot up. Drawing a few arcs from all directions, they pounced towards the mechanical martial artist in front of them. Let me try. The saber-toothed tiger was like an emotionless killing machine. He was unstoppable. Every time he attacked, he would definitely take a life. Regardless of whether you dodged or blocked, in front of this saber-toothed tiger, everything seemed to be futile. He reaped lives without any ripples. No one was able to withstand one of his attacks. Suddenly, from the depths of Bing's memories, that was his last battle. After that battle he went to build the recruit barracks. The heavy saber-toothed tiger landed on the ground lightly, as though there were thick pads of meat on the soles. The cold aura intertwined in the air, whistling in all directions like an inescapable net. The mechanical martial artist had nowhere to escape. Bing, this one I'll leave it to you. He could not remember. He did not know when it started. The commander felt that his ability to groom recruits was not bad, and transferred him to be an instructor. Oh, wrong. There was once when the losses were severe, there was no replenishment. The commander felt that there was a need to build a recruit barracks. After that, none of the assholes were willing, and after that he became the instructor of the recruit barracks. He became more and more outstanding, everyone praised him, and after that the recruit barracks added a few more instructors and he became the chief instructor of the recruit barracks. Then let me protect its glory. Let me wipe away the dust that has accumulated on this name for 1,000 years. The sharp tiger claws did not have any resistance, and pierced through Hong Guang's chest. The saber-toothed tiger's figure once again disappeared. He had never forgotten those days when he followed the commander and the rest to battle everywhere. Elbow strike. Fist strike. Knee strike. Kill them. The fear in De Wei's heart had long disappeared. The crowd's craziness had infected him. That's right, this was their only chance. The surrounding people were like wild beasts, fighting with their lives on the line, their roars converging into a shocking wave of anger. If only the commander and the rest were here, how good would that be? Oh, you guys would definitely fight for who comes first. Yes, definitely. Commander, I'm alone? Every figure was like an arrow piercing through the air. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.